Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Good Times Hour. All right, Paul, take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world, please get up on your feet and help me welcome to the tee our very next special guest. He's the captain of the Flight Line Armada, the never-ending line of champions from Glamourada, where every round is like a romp in the park. It's all scorch the course when this Mackey's on a lark. His name is so California, it's all oranges and angels and sunshine and everything in life that's fine. He's a strutter with no stutter, never a flutter in his putter, and his stroke was always smooth as butter. Uptime Supplement got this kid playing more than competent. He put a dent in the Pro Tour back when either he or the champ showed up. We knew who would light the lamp. And I don't know if you've heard, but if both were at the same spot, the whole field would be fighting for third. He's one half of the famous Suave and Gingerly. Suave for being smooth and ambidextrous on and off the course and where things led. And Gingerly because the old man was red and he only loved the Grateful Dead. Sounding like undercover vice cops, they were two warriors running the roads across the nation and dominating all the top players from station to station. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the tee, joining us from Hemet, California, the home of the Ramona pageant. He's the president of the fairways, Stephen Daniel Suave Valencia.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
So
Yeah, no problem.
it's our pleasure, honestly, and an honor. And before we jump into the framework, I just want to say, during the research, I came across a video. Ken Kleinman was on a podcast called Tour Life with Brody Smith and Paulo Lubari, and they were getting into the GOAT debate between Macbeth and Kleinman. And generally, most of the new players see what's happening now as super top level caliber players competing, and that it was basically Kenny alone. And Kenny stopped him. He said, "No." They asked him, "Are we forgetting anybody of that caliber?" He said, "No. Steve Valencia could throw with both hands. Great player, just didn't stay in the game that long. This is after 20 plus years, and Kenny puts you on that high level, and it's no boast about that." So I just want to say that that's the framework going into this because you are an important player in the history of disc golf, and we're honored to sit down and talk to you about it. So let's start with the framework, Mace.
Right
Yeah.
on. So, your number is 4256, and we always ask people this question. You remember since 1986, but what prompted it? Was there a time where you could have been in a lower number, or were you pretty much, did you just show up and get the number at a certain event or something like that? Because a lot of times people say, "Oh, I got it for Am Worlds, I got it for the World Championship. I could have been this, I could have been that." Like 75% of the people we talked to said, "I could have been in earlier if I'd have just listened to my friends." Or Levon was like, if I had paid attention to Tom Monroe and gave him my $15, then I'd have been like 34 instead of 580. So what's your story with your PDJ number?
I didn't, when I moved to Lomrod, I didn't know anything about Frisbee golf. I had a couple of high school friends. Well, actually, it was elementary school, back then, and just became friends. They lived down the street, and then they told me that they were going to go to the park and play Frisbee golf. And I was like, "What's that?" And I just started and it just grew from there. But when I started, I never threw left-handed. That was the funny thing. I always threw everything thumber right-handed.
Okay.
And
Threw everything.
that's your offhand, right? So not your dominant hand.
Yeah, I would throw everything thumber rollers, but my wrist and my forearm started hurting. So I had to figure out a way. So I just put it in my left hand and just went from there.
And so about the
Interesting.
PDGA number specifically, do you remember when you acquired that?
I want to say maybe like 80, 87, 88 maybe would be a good, right around that time.
Was there a specific reason you got it, or it was just something, was there an event that prompted it?
My friend, my friends Mike Brignoni and Joe Garcia at the time, they were PDGA members, and they told me that I needed to become one, so I jumped on it.
Right on.
So that's what I did.
Right on. So due to some of Paul's extensive research, we know that your career earnings were in the neighborhood of 43,329, but he also found a few events that weren't necessarily listed. But that's still pretty impressive for the amount of time that you were doing it. You played basically seriously active for about 8 years and then went on with life. So that's a pretty solid number.
Yeah, the game has definitely changed from then to now. That's for sure.
But I mean, you started in '87 officially with the PDJ, at least the PDJ database shows, and that number that Mace quoted, 43,000, it is a little skewed because they don't have all the tournaments in their database. And then in your big tour year of '91, there's at least 3 events there, 2 of which you won that aren't in the PDJ database. So you can't say that's the minimum amount of money you won. And that's only official, of course. You probably soaked in a lot of money on side games, on Friday night doubles, on hustles. Come on.
Yeah, that's like growing up with, we always say the bench boys, Randy Emmon, Ron Vingerelli, Sam Ferens, Mark Molnar. I mean, if there wasn't a side bet or something like that, something was wrong.
So you guys call yourselves the bench boys, huh? That's cool. I didn't know about that. And
Yeah, Joe Kugel. I mean, it was Graham Walker. I mean, there was quite a few of them. It was that's what it was. Rick Katayama. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
was Craig Leva in that crowd?
Craig Leva was there. With his dad. His dad would always come around. It was great just walking around, and definitely miss Craig. That's for sure.
Yeah, he was the big gun around here in Arlington when I was coming up, and so a lot of the names that I hear you mentioning, I've heard stories from him before as well, and then interviewing Sam, and it's interesting how those names just keep popping up. Interviewing Sam and Dave recently, and it's all these same, like I almost feel like I came up under that umbrella just because I heard those stories from Craig so many times.
Yeah, it's all these guys, man. It's just I still to this day I hang out with Randy and Mark Molnar. I don't know if you guys know the name Chicken.
Oh yeah,
I saw Chicken Hawk. Is that his official nickname?
That is his official nickname. Yes.
but everybody's shortened it. Like from what I hear, everybody just pretty much refers to him as Chicken.
Chicken.
That is correct. That is correct. Yeah. So he does disc golf values. I don't know if anybody is aware of that, but he owns disc golf values along with his wife Sharon.
Nice.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, it was Chicken Hawk in high school, and then like you said, it was now Chicken. So
How did you get Chicken Hawk in high school? Do you know?
Yeah, that was years ago. I probably met those guys in probably like 86, I think 85. I was just a little kid, starting the game at 12 years old.
Right.
Okay, and so he was
what,
another one of the guys that grew up in the neighborhood too, huh? It's really interesting talking to some of your old school guys like that, and just those names. I didn't realize he went that far back. I mean, I met him in I think in '98 when I went to LA the first time to play, not just to go to play events, but not just to go. Like I went to the first time I met you, I was doing a gig out there, and I just stayed for a few extra days, and I played the Whittier Narrows monthly, and then I played the La Mirada monthly the next day, and just made a weekend of it. But I didn't really know anybody from that standpoint because I was a rock and roll production guy going and doing a gig in Long Beach, and I was like, hey, it seemed like a good time to stay for another 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, it was definitely some good times. Like I said, there was never a day that there wasn't any money on the bench. That's for sure.
Nice.
I remember like me and Sam, myself, and Chicken, we would throw a deck of cards down, and it was $20 for a high card. $20 wins.
Nice.
Yeah, it was some fun times. That's for sure.
A lot of times on your hand and some extra money in the pocket.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So what else can we talk about the framework here, Mace?
Well, so I was just looking that over. In '87, you won the World Junior Championship. 700,000 participants each year. That's pretty amazing. I mean, like obviously, I guess that was qualifying from all over the world, and then
no, just around the United States.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. It was the U.S. I think there was 5 events, I think, and I won 4
Yeah.
of the 5. I didn't. I was never a freestyler. That was the only event that I didn't win. I was horrible at it.
Did you even try with the freestyle, or did you just not?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. And
yeah. I tried. I believe that during freestyle, was John Halk was there, and he was like a coach, or he was on the board basically of that,
Okay.
and he would flip me the Z's and stuff like that.
Oh, nice. Good person to have flipping you the Z's, that's for sure.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that people might not realize is that at that time, you weren't using exactly the same discs from one event to the other in terms of the different individual events, but they were all very similar discs, correct? There was no
Uh,
beveled edge discs back in '87, right?
Back in those days, it was you had to use whammo only.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, because it
so
was
for
their event.
yes, it was their event. So for distance, it was 91 mold, and then for accuracy, you could just use any floating disc that was okay. And then for golf, I used for distance, obviously 91 mold and 86 molds.
Cool.
86 miles for putting. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you
and
remember?
driving.
Do you
And what
remember?
about it? What wasn't there 71 mold in the mix as well?
There was, yeah, but that's a Randy Ammon disc there, not me. That was the bread and butter disc there.
You had to win a regional tournament to get there. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. God, where was it? I think it was like in Pasadena or something like that. So I had to go all the way to Pasadena
That's
for
like
that.
12, 15 miles away.
No, that's from La Mirada. That's probably like 40 miles, maybe
Oh, wow.
50.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So
So, and mom had to, jump in the car and take me down there.
nice. So you were the youngest player to qualify for the finals of the U.S. Open, the youngest player to win the U.S. Open as well, which is pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
I think I was 17. I think at that might have been 16. And I know it was a lucky shot against Mike Cloys. And still to this day, every now and then, if I talk to him, it's brought up.
Okay, so since you bring that up, I'm just going to go right to I found the quote from him about losing to you.
Oh.
Yeah. So where is it? He says, okay, he's reminiscing. You guys were tied for fourth for the final spot for the playoffs. So it went to for the final. So it went to a playoff. Here's his quote. Steve flails a drive off to the left about 80 feet under a tree at hole 16. I then put my drive about 20 to 25 feet from the pin downhill. Valencia gets up. He has to shoot uphill with a strong wind, and he drains it from 80. This was my first big choke. All I had to do was hit this little putt, but I missed it. The kid really deserves a lot of credit. He went on to be the youngest player to reach the finals of the U.S. Open. So it definitely stuck in his mind, and I'm glad that you guys still kind of give him.
Yeah, there's definitely a dagger in that story. But that year, it was in the finals was all La Mirada people. It was all La Mirada people, so it was cool, when I ran up there and grabbed the disc out of the basket, and then, they lifted me up in the air. I was just like you said, I was young. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
That's pretty amazing. It's, as I said before, I've heard so many of these La Mirada stories and experienced just a little bit of it myself to where when I showed up out there and saw things, I met Willie there, and then ran into him several times when I'd visit subsequently and played the Golden State Classic. And then that was the weekend before I was on The Price is Right. So that whole trip is just epic and lots of great memories. But I see and hear so many different things. And then, just going there and seeing some of those people like yourself and Sam and Frankie Arroyo and just all these different people that came from that spot. And then having heard all those stories from Leva, it's really interesting, to hear them just continue to pop up.
Yeah, that's actually the picture to get in the final against Cloys right there.
Nice.
Yeah, and obviously the only signature on that one is Willie's missing.
Right.
Willie's definitely missing. We're missing him for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he's definitely missed for sure around the disc golf community.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool to see him again once he started touring, once he hit retirement and just was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do until it's over. And to having gone out the way he wanted to go out like that, I thought that was really amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was just definitely fun just to be able to play disc golf at La Mirada and just you know being one of the best courses in the world. I think obviously the time 18 holes and then having making it 27 holes later. Obviously now it's different. Now there's 18 holes there.
Wow.
Oh, is that right? I haven't played it since that change.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lake course and then there's a back course.
But then there's the whole hybrid 18 that uses all of that, which is pretty tough and amazing as well. I mean,
I've never played that course. The big Cali course or whatever. I can't remember what they call it.
yeah, it definitely will grab you. And just some of the shots, and it's timeless. That the design, the original, and a lot of the original holes, but then the things that can be done out there and the things that were done. Like when we played it for that Golden State Classic, I was just like, wow, having a look around and just, it's a lot like Texas style golf where the trees are scattered. You can throw over most of them. You don't have to necessarily throw through many spots, but they're still really good obstacles. But then adding holes and, doing double ups and stuff like that. And you're just like, holy shit, this is tough,
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely fairways, that's for sure. If you were off the fairway, obviously you would hit trees, you'd have wide open gaps. The trees were tall enough where you could still throw a nice shot and get there.
Nice.
So we got a couple quotes that some people that I'm sure near and dear to your heart have said, but this is from Craze. Steve Valencia embraced the best parts of the professional disc golf and fellowship, his style, sportsmanship, and respect for others, on-course demeanor, sense of humor, precision approach skills, explosive distance abilities, smooth as silk putt, and flawless release. His ability to focus under extreme pressure and his unforgettable ear-to-ear grin are firmly among the best of the best to ever play and truly enjoy the sport. He is an amazing husband, father, and mentor, and true blue friend indeed to so many that hail from the LA family. I think that was pretty sweet. Nice thing for Craze to say.
Yeah, I got a story about Crazy, man. It was hilarious.
Spill the beans.
Oh my God. It was hilarious. That was the I want to say Iowa when me and John lost against Kenny and CR in the doubles. And I was mad, and John Ahart had a rental car. And I sat in the rental car and I was mad for losing. And I hit the window, the front windshield, and it cracked. And I was like, oh my God. Crazy is like, man, I can't believe that softball hit the windshield. There was a softball game going on. I was like, that's a good one, John. Or Trayson, I was like, yeah. And Ahart comes back and he's like, what happened to the windshield? I go, these guys hit a home run, hit the windshield. And I was like, oh, that's a good one, Crazy. I like that one. I said, I'm going to go with that one.
There you go.
He knows how to think on his feet. That's for sure.
Oh God,
Cover your tracks, quick.
Exactly. Darn softball.
So here's another thing. Here's another quote about you from Tita. Wait a second. He said, he reminds her of what Paul Macbeth was like, the young kid, so explosive and dynamic. Though he was thought he was invincible, running at everything, no fear, absolutely nice, friendly all the time, never intense, all fun, not cocky like Stokely. I can hear Tita saying all that too.
That's funny. Believe it or not, I saw Stokely yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah,
I
he's
saw.
out there running around. I've ran into Bill Nye and a bunch of different people recently.
Yeah, I went. He was at Mountain Pride in Marietta yesterday, so I made a plan to go see him for a little bit, and he was doing a clinic out there, and then just talked to him for a little bit. Just talked about how the game has changed from our days, to now. So it was,
Man, his
I
clinic skills are off the charts, man. He really does run a great clinic and has definitely taken the time to figure out a lot of different things of how to, help people turn the light on for themselves.
yeah, I didn't. I went after his clinic. I didn't want to. I wanted him to do his thing and talk to the people that paid for it. So I came after and we just talked for like 20 minutes or so.
Did he get you on film? Did he film it with you?
No, we actually, believe it or not, December 27th, I'm gonna see the guy. So it's gonna be I don't know, Jason Koch. I don't know if you remember him.
That
No,
name sounds familiar.
he's a guy that we went to high school, another guy that we went to high school with, and him and Frankie are good golfers.
Okay.
And so Jason Koch won a tournament recently. So the two of them have challenged me, Chicken, and Randy at Frisbee Golf and Best Shot. On the 27th, we're going to play La Mirada.
Nice.
And then after Frisbee Golf, then we're going across the street and playing 18 holes of ball golf. And it's all going to be Best Shot.
Wow.
So Frankie and Jason against the old men.
Nice.
Well, all
And
right.
Frankie's a really good golfer.
And this is
Frankie Arroyo?
Yeah, and Jason's a good golfer too.
Wow.
Okay,
Well.
I got a Frankie story. So
I got plenty of them.
I'm sure you do, but you ain't got this one. All right, so I go like this is in 95. It was the last year I played amateur, and I went and played the Great Lakes Open, and then I went and played Am Worlds in Cincinnati. And I think I was there early in the Great Lakes Open, and I was hanging out with Randolph. I'd made friends with him a year or two before that. I think about a year before that, maybe. And they had a random draw doubles at Kandahar, which was one of the courses that they used for the Great Lakes Open that year. And it was a ski area on an old trash dump, and so there was a lot of elevation and all kinds of stuff. Well, we played this doubles, and it never stopped raining. And I mean, like, I grew Stevie, and I think that we probably were like in the top three, but all I remember is it rained and rained and rained and rained and rained. And then all of a sudden we were playing this hole, and out of nowhere, out of the woods, here comes Frankie, and he goes, "Give me the keys, dude. I quit." And he had a girl for a partner, and he was so frustrated in the rain and everything that he just went to the car.
Yeah, that's funny. I got one. They had the team tournament in San Diego every December. Yeah, it was obviously it was a La Mirada team. And I don't know if I think I was done then, but Chicken had told me that they went out drinking and they were at a bar. And I don't know, they ended up getting a taxi, but Frankie was so drunk, taxi came, he couldn't even walk. They had to hold him up. And the guy says, if he throws up, you have to pay. They threw him in the back of the trunk. They didn't have him in the back of the seat. They threw him in the back of the trunk, and they closed the trunk and they took off back to the hotel. And then when they got back to the hotel, he had thrown up. And Chicken was like, "Here's 100." Yeah, they paid.
Damn.
That's honorable.
Yeah.
All right, let's do some deeper dives now.
Right.
We're gonna talk about La Mirada first and your origin story. You've already kind of touched on some of that, but just to put it in perspective, La Mirada is the second pole hole course in the world. Southern California being particularly blessed with Oak Grove and then La Mirada, probably within weeks or at least a couple months of each other. By the way, the whole land La Mirada is a city was known as the nation's first completely planned city, and it looks like it worked out well, especially with the regional park there, where The course was installed. Um, as you say, it expanded it to 27 holes. Just a quick note there: Dave Donapace and Tim Zielinski designed that back nine, those extra nine.
Yeah.
Jeff, they all talk about it, but one of the questions I want to ask you amongst all these origin story questions is the importance of Dan Mangoni to you personally. I know he was very instrumental in getting a lot of juniors to play. What kind of figure was he in your life?
He was always there, especially for the juniors. He wanted the juniors to get involved. He would always tell us, for example, the junior, world championships, you got to go, you got to go. I wanted to go. And at the time, I think Mike Taylor was a freestyler. He could play, he could throw distance, I never did it. And then I finally did it in 87. And I was lucky enough to do, obviously win. But Dan was always there. I worked for Dan, at the little trailer, right there on the side. And he would drop off the trailer and open up. And then I would show up and work there. And we would just putt around. And I was always practicing my 40, 50 footers, and he was always there. Let's play horse. Let's play horse, and very rarely did he come out and play with us guys, like 9 holes or something, but he did though, and then we would just like, you got to play more, it was like, you're doing all of this and you don't even really play, it's just, let's play more. And he was a businessman, he's done great for himself with discovering the world. That's for sure. From Orbiter's Odyssey to discovering the world, it's, big time blossom.
It's so important. In Southern California, it's so important to the history of disc golf, and to have someone like that be the pillar, the foundation for.
Yeah.
And it's really no hyperbole to say that La Mirada is where champions were made. And you look at the people that come out of there.
That was definitely his saying. That's for sure. Somewhere I have a towel that I've never used. It's a white towel with the red and black logo, with the old hole 23 with the basket and the like spider tree right there. And on the bottom, that's, that logo is where champions are made. I have it somewhere, never used it. It's still crispy.
Nice.
Never used. I just have to find it.
So you mentioned that your family moved to La Mirada. Do you remember what age that was?
Oh, I'd probably, yeah, I was, I think I was like in 5th grade when we moved out there.
Okay.
Probably like 6 or 7 or something like that.
There's one of the memories we have from Crazy. Here's another, because I asked a few people, hey, when you got any Steve Valencia stories? Because let me tell you something, finding information out about you online is difficult. You keep a very low digital profile. But Crazy has this memory to share. He, like a couple other LA kids like Stevie and Bamba and Stokely and Leva from the 80s, would show up at the last second at various monthly tournaments. We all held those Rugrats as our pride and joy. Often, Suave was running across the street into the park to show up at the big grouping just before the sign up / tee off, all out of breath. He'd borrow $5, ask to borrow a couple of discs, and then sometimes win at 12 or 13 years old. Do you remember those days?
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember. I lived right off of hole 7, about 15 houses down. And I could come down the street and be on hole 7, or hole 8 basically, or go the other way with my friends, Mike Brignoni and Joe Garcia and Phil Hewitt, and be by hole 14. It was either this way or this way, that's what we did. And obviously we weren't driving, so we walked, and it was like a 10-minute walk. And then
it's pretty cool to grow up in a neighborhood like that
and just play all day. I mean, summertime with no school, I'd be out there like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I'd eat breakfast and then be out there and then not come home until 9 o'clock at night. I would just be playing all day.
Would you play some muddy rounds? Would you lure in some?
Oh, I got my butt kicked. I got my butt kicked with Randy Hammond, Sam Ferrens, all those guys. I mean, I definitely got my butt. I'd be out there. Yeah, I lost a lot. I lost money, but it all came back though.
Well, yes, indeed. Well, let's start. Let's just jump into 1987. You're 15 years old. Mace, take it away.
Oh, you're just leaving me on the spot there. I was doing other research. All right, so 15 years of age, you're hitting your first events. Um, there are four events that were listed for that year: the Wintertime Open, the U.S. Open, the La Mirada Open, and the World Juniors. Um, first, obviously, I guess this event did it just have a 40th anniversary? The Wintertime Open
Yeah, I
started in
think so.
'87, so yeah, it would have been what 45 now.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. And there was also another tournament in Huntington Beach. I think I was 15 or 16 or something like that, and that was my first men's tournament that I won
Yeah,
in Huntington Beach. And
Yeah, was that the Higher Flyers?
that's
yeah,
yeah.
that was my first men's tournament, and I believe I was 15. And
That
coming
was in
back, it was a great feeling at 15 winning a men's tournament. That's for sure.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, and it's kind of interesting where I think that to some degree that kind of stuff went on in other places too, but not like you guys were the first people to experience it. But like they talked up like the craze talking about you showing up at the course and borrowing the entry fee and then borrowing the disc. Sam Grizzoffi used to do that. He'd borrow a disc from four different people and then he'd have the $10 to get in and then he'd whoop everybody, and
Yeah,
and like on discs, like he was figuring out on the first four holes, like how is this gonna fly? How beat up, how broken is this? And like everybody else is looking at that disc going, man, that thing's been in my bag for 14, 16, 18 months. And I'm not giving it up because I know how it's gonna fly. And then, folks like you just show up and go, oh yeah, oh wait, this will work just like this. I'll just put more edge into it, flip it. Oh, it's around the corner. So that's
yeah. I would always be like, what disc is your beat up disc? Because I'm just gonna throw it hyzer, and then have it flip up and go straight, or throw it flat and turn over. So I don't know if you ever talked to Mitch McClellan, but there's a story.
oh yeah.
You know about that one?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
Let's
we
hear it.
know Mitch, but go ahead.
Yeah, he came in for the La Mirada Open, and we were playing doubles. I think back then it started doubles was on Friday, and the tournament was Saturday and Sunday. And I think he probably came in like on a Tuesday or something like that. So we were doing flip random doubles, and I was like 16, 15, and I was a little, back then, a little cocky for a kid. So him and I teamed up, and I said, "So are you any good?" Little did I know who he was after the fact. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he like looked at me and he was like, "I'm all right," But that was funny. That was funny. Yeah, that was great.
yeah. That's something else that and that's one thing. Obviously, going all the way back to those days, that there's pockets everywhere of
Oh yeah.
of folks that you just didn't know, and you didn't. There's no reason for you to realize about them because until you popped up and then try to compete with them. Oh wait, you're the same guy. I'm the same guy as you, except for in my scene. Well, it wasn't ever me.
Yeah.
Let me clarify. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I was
And then
always the promoter guy, but
just traveling, and then becoming close, with them and Mitch and Johnny Mack, and staying at their house, and we would just laugh about that story. It was funny.
yeah, that's good stuff.
It was funny. But I remember like Mike Sayer and Sam Grizzoffi and Biff coming into the Wintertime Open in February, and they'd always come and it would always rain.
Right.
It would always rain in the Wintertime Open in February.
Never
Well,
rains in Southern California except for when the Texans come to town.
Yeah, yeah, cold
that
and raining. It was horrible.
leads to the course nickname of Soak Grove.
Exactly. Yeah, rivers running through that course for sure.
There were stories of where somebody's disc would land, the water would start picking up, and they would roll or float their disc down the fairway 150, 200 yards away.
Yeah.
One time, I think it landed one disc went into a culvert, and then it made its way to the LA River and probably into the ocean
The
before it got
Basin
to get
down
up there
there.
to
Yeah.
Mark.
Yep. Yeah. It was always cold.
So
You
that
always
first
have to,
tournament, you're 15 years old and you played juniors. I think
yeah.
back then, obviously, there was only juniors and pros.
Yeah.
And you win. It doesn't show what the scores were, but do you recall? Was it a blowout? Did you just?
No, no, but I won like after outright. There was no playoff, and back in those days, it was John Ahart's course, So as a 15-year-old, you beat him on his own course, that was a good feat, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Are you guys similar age, you and John?
Um, I want to say he's probably like 9 years older than me. I know Randy Ammon, you know, he's a what senior grandmaster now, 60s.
Hmm.
So he's probably like 9 or 10 years older than me,
Okay.
right around there.
All right. So
You,
we pretty much covered that Wintertime Open. So
yeah. Let's
then
just jump.
the U.S. Open switches over, or the U.S. Open comes about after the purchase of Whammo by Kransco in 1983, and they shut down the International Frisbee Association and also the World Frisbee Championships, and as a result, the U.S. Open is born. That seeing that thing begin, and then seeing what's come from it, that had to have been pretty interesting. From a
Yeah.
very young age. I mean, like ground floor, and then
Yeah, I remember this and shock how many people from different countries would come to this thing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Before you played in '87, before you became the youngest player to play in the U.S. Open, did you just go like each year that it would happen from '83 on, '83, '84, '85, '86? Would you just go and watch while you were living across the
I
street?
didn't I I don't I think I just maybe like 85, 84, just go out there and summertime and just like, whoa, what is this? Because wasn't really following the circle of that particular event, and then got to know it, and then it was every June, and was just like I said, I was shocked on how many people from other countries would come.
Oh yeah, it was called the largest, richest, most prestigious, and best organized flying disc meet in existence. And
Yeah.
the '87 one that you played in was a special one because that's the 30th anniversary of the invention of the frisbee, and so
Mm.
it seemed like there was more uh, more hype about it. But typically, the U.S. Open would draw 15 to 20,000 spectators. Like you're living across the street, you see all this stuff happen. You must be thinking, what's going on in the park today?
Yeah, I mean the streets would just be packed. I mean, they'd have Spud McKenzie there, radio station, K Rock. They'd have Bud Light girls. You know,
man,
I'm
that's
15. I'm 15, looking at the Bud Light girls, and my younger brother, he's 8. I actually have a picture of him looking up at a Bud Light girl, and it was funny. I was like, I think this is my brother, and I showed my mom, and she was like, "Yep, that's your brother." Yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah. But
something else. I mean, to see that right there in your own neighborhood, and then it's kind of strange to hear about this at this point, and then just like all this, we were there, and then what happened that made us go back so far and took so long to get there again? Because I mean, we're kind of there again in this at this point with disc golf, and it's
yeah.
not the overall, but it's it makes me wonder what went wrong. How is it that we weren't able to maintain that momentum, or what was it that changed? That
Yeah. I think I believe, do they still have I'm not sure, the whiff diff
yeah,
overalls and stuff like that? They still got that?
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not.
But
It's not I don't think it's
It's
as big as the US Open,
no, and it's
back
not as
back in
well.
the day.
well, and I mean, when you think about it, in the '70s and especially even lingering into the '80s, the word frisbee, the idea of frisbee was in the zeitgeist, and it was a physical activity. It wasn't just a sport for or a pastime for deadheads and pot smokers or whatever. Like it was an active lifestyle kind of thing, and people
Yeah.
are active lifestyle enthusiasts. And
Yeah.
and Southern California is no better place. I mean, you look at the $50,000 tournament, the fact that they had tournaments in the Rose Bowl, La Mirada getting 20,000 people to watch. These are incredible numbers. And as you say, Mace, it's something happened along the way to only now we're getting back to what was that, the European Championships or the European Open? They had the largest gallery they've seen since about this time.
Yeah. La Mirada, I mean, those softball fields would just be packed with people.
Wow.
I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, they had vendor machines, vending machines out there, people selling hot dogs, hamburgers, snow cones, and I mean, I'd be in the event, and then people in high school would be there and looking at me like, "Whoa, you do this?" I was kind of like, how to this day I still laugh because I was kind of like Richie Valens. I would walk to school, and I would carry my frisbees to school with me. I would always leave early and then get to like by hole 3 and practice putting, and then walk to school when I get done for like 20 minutes. And then when I get home or done with school, then I would go play with the guys.
Was your school like kind of on the edge of the park?
It was right across the street. Like basically, Brian, if you remember me hitting those golf balls on to the
for sure.
golf course, it's right across the street, just the fence would separate the high school from the golf course.
Oh, all right. So over to the left, kind of from the golf course.
Exactly.
Right.
That was the high school right
Wow.
there. So I'd always
That's
have to walk.
amazing.
I'd always have to walk through the park. So I was pretty much walking through the frisbee course, every day.
Play a couple holes on the way.
Yep. Yep.
Well, it's no wonder why you enjoyed so much success at La Mirada, especially in the early days. And that brings us right to the next event, La Mirada Open. According to the PDGA, there are 142 pro players in the field. You take 28th, and the last cash spot, $80.
I remember that.
Going into this, you're 15 years old, and you're beating 114 players at one of the top richest events in the United States. How were you feeling? Was your confidence just off the charts?
I just played a lot, and I would have good rounds. I knew my potential, but I think being so young and having so many people there and not really, like the McClellans and, Grizzoffi and those guys coming over, and Eric Marks, showed up to those, events. I didn't really know that people came from other states like that, and it was like, wow, who's this guy? Who's this guy?
Are you any good?
It was like really, yeah, exactly. It was really easy to get 28, and just being nervous, like, oh, about hopefully I cash and stuff like that. And, excited that I got 28th, made money.
You get $80. Do you remember what you did with it?
I don't remember.
Right away.
Probably
20, at least 20 of that went to the bench for sure.
$20 for a high card.
So obviously, cashing in your first big real, not, I mean, you're at the US Open, but this is your first big real cash amongst the top level tier disc golfers. Did you get many comparisons to being the next Sam Ferens?
Sam was definitely good, and back then, tall, lanky,
yeah,
and huck it a mile. He would throw his AVRs just like Craig Leva would. I'm throwing a rock, over a tree, and he's just flicking an AVR over trees, and it's like, what are you doing? And it makes it looks so easy.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things I remember, like rocks and AVRs going further than everybody else's everything.
Yeah.
Leva, and mostly AVRs, and just out of stubbornness.
AVRs and rocks. I'd always have a beat up rock to turn, and go flat, and then a new one. And then back then, obviously Stingrays, and then Cobra wasn't around. It was always Stingrays, and if you hit a tree with a Stingray, you had to grab a new Stingray because that one now turns over.
Yeah, that's one of the things that folks don't really realize, that like back in the DX days, you had to have a brand new one and a broken one and one that was in between that was on its way to being
Yeah,
broken all the time. You know, everything that you loved DX, you had to have at least two versions, if not three. You know,
yeah. And then if you laid it down in your car, you know, obviously if you're driving and if it bent sit the wrong way, then it's bent, and well, that new one's now a roller disc because
yeah,
you couldn't get it back together. You know, it
So,
was like you said, you definitely had to have three in your bag. That's for sure.
so final question about this first La Mirada Open. I noticed in the results that's where Dan Ginley. Is this the first time you meet Ginley at that tournament?
Yeah, yeah. That's when I first met him, and you know, working the shop and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, this guy's from Arizona, and you know, I think back then he had long hair and you know, long red hair, and you know, he always say, oh, what is this cocky kid doing here? You know, working at the shack.
I can hear him saying all that.
Yeah,
And now he
he,
has a shack of his own.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's really yeah, it's really cool to go in there. I go in there every spring to go to the memorial and watch his son and listen to his son. And man, Alex has really figured out like it's really impressive how he knows all these different brands. He doesn't just know like the big three or whatever. He can talk to people. They go, "What about this disc?" Blah 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 blah, and he's all over it. It's really really cool, and I'm sure Dan really digs it a lot too.
Yeah, I watched the clip a little bit of Dano, and you were talking about Alex, and you said that he just knows the disc and what they do, and you know, and I was like, dang, you know, I was impressed myself when he was saying that he knew all, you know, how the disc, you know, would fly and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's really well, and it's I've known him since he was little, and I mean obviously you've been around longer than that, and it's cool to see kids develop into that. And he's not a kid anymore. He's a grown man,
No,
and he's chosen to continue to do that, and so that's really cool. And
yeah,
so you talked about all the people traveling in, and so then all of a sudden to go to this World Junior, you became one of the travelers. What was that like? When you went to Atlanta to play for the World Juniors at Six Flags there, how did that feel to be on the other side of the coin, being the hot
I
the hot player from the West Coast coming in?
in high school, you know, just to be able to win, you know, that particular event and first of all qualify, I was excited, and then figure out that I was going to go to Atlanta. And always, when I was younger, Scott Zimmerman would always come over. He would actually come to my house, knock on my door. It'd be 9 o'clock at night. I'm getting ready for bed. He's like, let's go play. You know, and I would be like, hey, Mom, Scott's here. Is it right if I go play? And we would play night golf at La Mirada. For some reason, there would always be a light like right around the basket. And we could just play 18 holes. And
Nice.
he would come over off a lot, and we would do that. And I always, you know, him being the stud of the overall events at the U.S. Open, just winning so many times, you know, I wanted to take him to Atlanta and be like my mentor and, you know, freestyle, because I was horrible at freestyle. It
Yeah.
was something I didn't practice, and you know, being the stud that he was in overall events, I wanted, you know, him. And my mom looked at me and said, nope, he ain't going. You know, so my mom went, and my grandmother went, and you know, we flew across the country to Atlanta, which that was fun.
And you
That was
you
fun.
you say you didn't play or you did bet poorly in the freestyle, but the other ones you won: disc golf, MTA, distance, accuracy. Was it close in any of those categories?
Um, I think, well, if I remember in accuracy, I missed. I think I missed one shot in accuracy. Um, Distance. The field that they used, there was a fence and there was trees in the back, and I would hit the tree, so I never really got to see actually how far I would throw, because I would hit the trees, but nobody else would be throwing over the fence or hitting the trees. So they would just be like, "Well, we can't mark it. All right, he won," you know, kind of thing. Nobody would get there, you know. In
Yeah.
golf, in golf, I didn't think I won because I didn't play very well. And when the scores came in, I think I won like by 4 or 5 strokes, you
Wow.
know, and to actually about maybe 4 months ago, there was a competitor, Jesse. He found me on Facebook and he's like, I know if you don't remember me, but we competed in Atlanta together for the 87 World Junior Championships. And I think he lives in like up north in like Oregon area or something like that. So, we talked a little bit about, 87 and that stuff, but he still plays. He plays disc golf now.
Right on. There's
That's
another
awesome.
one I came across in the research. I couldn't read the article because it was one of those things where you had to be, you had to pay a subscription to the newspaper or whatever. But this person also competed in the '87, and there's some fairly big level DJ in like Delaware or Maryland or somewhere like that. So I wanted to see if I could get different perspectives on that event. It's hard to find information about the WAMO World Junior Championships. So I appreciate this opportunity of getting some stories from the
Yeah.
champ.
Yeah. It was definitely fun. And then just being able to win. And when I quit, I stopped playing for a long time. I I wanted to just get rid of all of the trophies and stuff. And my aunt, she wanted them. So I gave all my trophies to my aunt. And then all of the 87 junior, she had them. I gave them all to her.
Wow.
The only trophy I didn't have, obviously, was freestyle.
Right on.
That was it. But I was always impressed, with the U.S. Open and watching crazy, the Bud Light team and the Coloradicals, just, man, this is awesome because I never knew anything about it.
Right.
But I was like, yeah, this just looks way too hard. It's not me.
That's funny because
Definitely
for
not.
someone we've heard so much about your how smooth the form you were, it seems like it would be a natural fit for you, but it's interesting that you
It
say it
just,
was too hard.
it just wasn't me. I didn't like the fact that I'd always bite my nails. So for one, I'd have to use those fake nails, from the crazy glue
Right, right.
in the cap, cut them into a nail. And it was like, I didn't like that on my fingers. I was like, that's not me. So I'd be spinning, freestyle, on my skin, not a nail.
Yeah, that doesn't slide very well.
No, it doesn't.
Hey, so what was the regional event that you qualified for that World Junior set?
Where was it?
Yeah.
It was in Pasadena.
It was in Pasadena.
It was in Pasadena where I qualified at.
And was that just a dedicated qualifier? I mean, was it
Yeah.
another event that was on, or was it just specifically to qualify for?
Yeah. Yeah. You had to qualify there and you had to win. And Dan Mangoni always like pushed me, you got to go, you got to go. And I never went. And then you got to go. This is your last year, being in '87. So I went and I won it. And I won '87, worlds.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
So okay, let's talk about now it's 1988. Your first full year as a pro. You started '87 as a junior, finished as a pro. Now you're fully pro. Your first event, at least according to the PDJ database, is the Huntington Beach March tournament, followed by the higher flyer doubles, where you get your first win. You team up with Jeff Lissaman, and you get your first pro win, beating such people as Zimmerman and Crazy John. Sam Farron's playing with Mike Williams. You over the course of your career, you have quite a success in doubles. What's you've had some really amazing partners playing in doubles. What stands out with playing with Jeff Lissaman? What was that like?
He would never miss a 30-footer.
Right.
It was easy. And Huntington Beach wasn't, not a long course. So if you just threw it close, he would make it. Me being kid, you go first, Steve. If I missed, ching, Jeff would just cover his eyes and throw it in from 30 feet. It was automatic. It was always fun to watch. And, Johnny the same way. Both of those guys would just putt, putt, putt. And then traveling, in '91 when they were, the three amigos, we would actually putt with no chains. take the chains off the basket and just have the pole.
Wow.
And we would just sit outside and just putt for hours and just putt hours over at Andy, like Fankhauser's house and stuff like that. We'd always stay there.
Okay. I
Take
was
the
wondering
chains off
about
and
that.
putt. Take the chains out, putt. Did it in Oklahoma at, Mitch McClellan's house too. They'd have baskets out there. Take the chains off and just try to set it in there.
Hit that pull. Oh yeah. Well, back then it was a narrow tray, or short tray, so you really did have to sit it in there.
Yeah, yeah. And if it were too hard, obviously it would just go right through with the single chains, Or back then double chains, but there were not very many double chains.
Yeah, the double chains didn't come all the way to the bottom. There was a lot of cut through still, for sure.
Yeah. And then like putting back then, I've always tried to I'd always putt hyzer to the right of the pole. That was my thing, because putting left of the pole would either, because there were so little chains there, would just slide through all the time. So I always try to make my effort to putt hyzer to the right of the pole, and then when it hit, and then it would just hit the tray on the right side and stick.
Hmm.
That was my thing. And Chicken Hawk would always say, you putt horrible, I'm like, what do you mean? That's what I do. Just right side. Yeah. Yeah. He was just shaking his head. He was like, you're always to the right, always to the right. I go, I try to do that. But now you could throw it 100 miles an hour and those things don't go through.
Yeah. I mean, the kids are playing with way better equipment, better discs that are flying way faster. I mean, at the Marauder, I remember there was an in the bag, and I got a quote from you. You said you could throw the Marauder 500 feet. That's like a speed 7 disc. Imagine a speed 14 disc, how far, I mean, it's
Yeah,
trying
that
to
was kind of like
compare.
that was kind of like a rock to me. I had to throw it soft because it would go too far for me. If it was like a
Wow.
325, 350 foot hole, I'd have to like a couple steps and just flick it, and I'd be like, slow down, slow down.
Okay,
I
so
remember playing a tournament in Troy, Michigan, and there was a hole that you had to throw along the water, and I threw a Marauder over the water, just barely making it. And people were like, you just threw a Marauder that far. And there was even cyclones too at the time. There were cyclones, which back then Cyclone was like my go-to for rollers and just long distance stuff.
okay.
I loved it. And with Jim Kenner, allowing me to go to the store and just pick like what I wanted, because I like special blends, if you would, back then. I always liked the chalky. Some disc had the chalky feel to it.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the ones that I always liked.
And you could just go into the shop in the fantasy land, just
Me and Ginley, and Ginley and he got me into putting super puppies, and we're doing that, and we wanted, like, hey Jim, we put super puppies, let's do something with, something like a super puppy. And then he made the Rattler.
The Rattler.
okay.
Yeah. So it was close to the super puppy, and we putted with the Rattlers for a little bit, and every now and then I would switch from like that, and then if I'd have like a bad couple weeks, I would switch to an 86 mold or an AVR. I just always switched it up.
Okay.
Putt regular, putt straddle. I mean, I always mixed it up.
That's amazing.
Nice.
That's counterintuitive to a lot of the wisdom now. People say, get new discs the same, stick with it, don't change things. And
Lock in with the pair.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Or 3 or 4.
So 1988, you're 16, you're finished, what, grade 11, I believe, in the summertime? And
10th grade.
10th grade, okay.
Yeah.
You win now the La Mirada Open.
Yeah.
This is again 76 MPOs, total 200 entrants, over 10,000 prize money, one of the biggest purses in North America. You win $1,500. You beat Randy Amon, Jim Oates, Leonard Muse, Dave Dunapay, Sam Stokely, Joe Rosino. I mean, this is your statement event. Now all of a sudden you are in this conversation. But even more importantly, you got $1,500, and that gets you on the top 25 money winner list for 1988.
I was excited.
What, where do you go from there? I mean, I know there's a quote where it said, you could be making $8,000 a year on the tour if only you didn't have to go to school. You have to go back to school in a month, and you got $1,500 burning a hole in your pocket. What do you do with that?
Go to the bench and gamble.
You were the instant high roller at the bench after that one.
Yeah, I was like, come on, you guys are weak. You got jobs. Yeah, it was not no school, obviously. It'd be like it was just have, like you said, have 1,500 and take $50 to school. I was like, I was in heaven. I was like, man, I got $50 and man, I got $1,450 at home. Let's go here, kind of thing.
I mean, that's back when video game arcades were huge too. Were you a big video gamer back then?
You know what? I wasn't, but there was always a game that I can never be good at. It was a game called Dragon Slayer at the arcade game.
That was a tough one.
Yeah, I'd always die. And I think back then it was 50 cents to play. It was like 50 cents to play. That was brutal.
It definitely wasn't a single quarter. That was definitely like one of the first games that was 50 cents or more.
Yeah, and it would be like 50 cents. I'm not paying 50 cents to lose. Yeah, but that, and there was a game called Star Castle.
Star Castle
that I was good at. You had to hit the ship inside the little, the octagon.
Okay.
Yeah, I was always good at that game.
Right on.
But not really. I wasn't really a arcade guy. It was disc golf, and then I'd play soccer in high school.
Did you play tennis at those courts at La Mirada?
No, I messed around. Frankie played tennis. I obviously had some friends that were on the tennis team, and I'd be like, oh, let's play. I got another soccer buddy, Al Martinez. He played tennis, but I couldn't do it because of my elbow. When I was younger, I pitched, and just throwing too much junk at a young age just hurt my elbow. So the vibration from the tennis would just kill my elbow, and it would have its own heartbeat. It'd be brutal.
Wow.
No, that's no good.
Yeah. And I play softball, and I can only warm up for so long. And then once I feel it starting to get a heartbeat going, I got to stop. And then if I played outfield, I usually would pitch in softball. It's underhand, but I would play sometimes outfield. And then if I'd have to throw one, I would just get like these shock of needles going through my right arm. And, I have a buddy who was like, I know that hurt. I'm like, yeah, it hurt. It hurt for sure.
Okay, so let's skip on to 1989 now. I hope you don't mind us going kind of through the years chronologically, but with all these kind of room for digressions.
Uh-huh.
But 89 is kind of an interesting watershed year.
Yeah, it was. I remember in '88 at the La Mirada Open, Eric Marks came and played that tournament, and then he was just so smooth. He would have his little hop that he does.
Yeah, that little stutter step in his approach.
Yeah, I was like, that's weird. And then I asked him if he wanted to play doubles the next year, and he was like, yeah. And so in '89 he came, and so we teamed up, and being everybody was gambling and stuff like that. We put an extra $25 winner take all. And obviously $25 back then was a lot of money. And he said that he couldn't do it. And I was like, Eric, I got you. And we ended up winning. We ended up winning doubles, and we split the money. And I think he didn't want all the money. He gave some of the money back to me. He was like, no, just, here, you put me in, I'll just take a little bit. And we won that one. And I was lucky enough to win the La Mirada Open, back-to-back years. So I won the doubles and the singles.
Yep. Again, you put your stamp on La Mirada, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Eric was kind of a surprising player too to me, because he was another one of the big names in Texas. And I remember I knew who he was and I saw his results, but then one time I got lucky and got drawn. I got carded with him early in the tournament, and I was just amazed, like the shots that he would produce and the the power, the explosiveness that he would get from that stutter step. And
Well, I'll say that stutter step is like, how are you throwing that? It was crazy.
and then I played with him years later. I got paired up with him when I was doing doubles tours like Stokely does, and when he lives out in Asheville now, and he was approaching, he was in his 50s at the time, and he was still smashing it, and you're just like watching, going, yeah, there you go. Years later, here he is again, and
yeah, and still to this day, he's still playing. I don't play much. Like I said, I talked to Stokely yesterday. I told him, let's go play around for the old time's sakes. So we're trying to plan that. So I got his number. So that would be good. Of course, when I throw, I'll be sore. I know that.
Now the body starts rebelling after you turn 50. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just not playing for so long and then trying to throw hard or harder to try to keep up with these guys. And, and for some reason, I don't know why, I was telling my buddy this, is like, why am I throwing 175 grams still?
Right.
It was like, go down to 170 or 171, you're wearing out your body throwing that heavier disc.
Well, even they've got beautiful mid 160s that are, in stable plastic and it just seems to fly forever and glide.
Yeah.
But again, courses nowadays are getting so monstrous that you gotta adopt these sneaky technologies,
Yeah, that's what Stokely was saying yesterday. He was like, these courses are far, you got these wooded holes that are 700 feet and OB to the left, OB to the right. You got to hit an island, and and it was like, you got to practice the course and throw far. And these guys throw a mile.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen these guys on YouTube just throwing 600 feet, no problem.
Like it's nothing, and small guys too. I mean, like I remember.
Yeah.
First time seeing Brad Hammock in like '96, and how far he threw from such a little package, and then now you see guys like Emerson Keith who are similar size, height wise, but still his frame's way smaller than Brad's frame, and he's still bombing it.
Yeah. Brad would throw far for sure for a little short guy.
Yeah, without a doubt.
For sure. He would throw a mile. And he probably still throws a mile if he's still playing.
I think he's he's doing a lot of caddying for people, especially Ulibarri, right?
Yeah, he's full-time caddying for Ulibarri.
Is he really?
Yeah. It'd be interesting to know what that deal is. So in '89, there's some good events on the list here some big events, obviously. Bud Light Wintertime Open, the March Monthly at HB, San Diego Spring Fling, US Open, La Mirada Open, Shelley Sharp Memorial. But the one that pops up, I don't know if this was your first time to go, but going to the Worlds in Iowa, I mean, that had to have been a pretty big eye-opening experience. And it marked the first time that you and Kenny really went head to head for a major at the very least. Was that the first time you really became aware of Kenny?
No, actually, no. I didn't know of Kenny. I was just playing. Right now, I knew of Greg Hosfeld back then because Hosfeld would always travel, and then he was an overall player, so he would always come to the U.S. Open. So I traveled with Amy Becken in '89. That was my first Worlds, and I believe we ended up winning mixed doubles.
Yep.
And then when the Worlds was over, I don't know what that took. Like, I don't remember what place I got.
You took
maybe like 28th or something like that. I don't remember.
You took tied for 20 with Dave Greenwell.
With Greenwell? Yeah. And that was just fun. I was obviously nervous being, not La Mirada, that's for sure.
Right.
So it was a whole different, perspective for me. And just seeing all these people come to one event,
Now you're just fresh off of your back-to-back victory at La Mirada, your second year in a row, over 101 other MPO, again winning $1,500. So going into the Worlds, you got $1,500.
I was confident, yeah,
and confidence. Did you feel like, yeah, you're in the right place?
Yeah, yeah, I did. Obviously, you know, the spot that I came in, my finish wasn't as good as I thought I would, be able to get. But there's so many people, the world championships. Obviously, it's hard to win. I mean, still to this day,
For
you know.
sure.
It's just unfortunate that was one event that I was never able to win the singles title for.
Yeah. You came pretty close with the tie for third in 91, I believe it was.
Yeah, and I believe it was Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
still to this day, that putt that I missed for $1,000 on the skin hole hurt. I just like nubbed out, and Kenny got the $1,000. I just dropped my head. I was like, darn.
Some things we just can't let go.
Yeah, that hurt. $1,000, that was a lot of money.
So we're asking about Kenny because we're going to have Kenny on later, and it seems natural to me. Each of you, your first Worlds is the '89 Worlds in Iowa, and you're coming from other sides of the country. How much aware of like were you getting the magazines? Were you guys talking about? I know you said you were aware of Hosfeld, but were you aware of some of the other names that potentially
Uh,
at the
yeah,
Worlds?
Greenwell was always up there. Looking at I think it was Disc Golf World News back then
Yep.
with Rick Rothstein.
Mm-hmm.
I was always excited to get those and read other players, what they were doing and see who was winning and stuff like that. But Rick or David, Wise Cup,
Right.
Tom Monroe, all Slate Paul, all those guys back there, they were just always seemed to be in the top of the list.
You get the chance to step out onto the same courses as them and see and size up the talent basically. And even though
Yeah.
you were kind of disappointed with the way you played, 20th in your first Worlds is still pretty good.
Yeah, I would like to have done better, but it is what it is. Can't win everything, that's for sure.
So Wise Cup at that time was, I mean, he ended up winning those Worlds, and he was usually a top contender at most Worlds or at most big events if he showed up. This is, we're talking BC before Climo, in his reign of dominance. So back then, I'm interested in the positioning of things. How much of a I mean, you played against Wise Cup many times over the
Yeah.
next couple of years. As a competitor, like was he also similarly very difficult to beat psychologically like Climo?
Yeah, I mean, Steve Weisskopf was a great putter, just like Johnny and Jeff Lissaman. Him and his 86 molds would just 30 feet. It was like automatic. And just that putt form that he had was just like, whoa, what's this? And then dead center flat every time,
Oh,
right in the middle. I was like, he's going to make it. He's going to make it. Count it. That's what they would always say, count it, But yeah, Wise Cup, Slate Paul, I'd stayed at his house. Danny and I would stay at his house quite a bit. Stayed at Wise Cup's house a lot, kind of like our home base in Dayton, So, but those guys, we'd always play and just to watch those guys being, just then, I was 18 then traveling with, at the time, Bob Dodge and then Danny, Dano a year later, just got to see how Danny ran it. Cause Dano's the one who made the schedule. I was just the, where are we going next, Dad?
So in '89, you were traveling with dodgeball?
No, I was still in high school.
Okay.
After the U.S. Open in 1990, I left 2 days later after the tournament because I graduated, and our first tournament was in Victoria, Texas.
All right. I've played that course. I like that course.
Yeah, Victoria, Texas, and we left Riverside at midnight and got to Victoria, Texas midnight the next day. 24 hours, you drove straight.
Damn.
We were excited. I was on the road, and Saturday I believe I was winning, and I ended up getting food poisoning a Saturday night at the Mexican restaurant, and I was up all night just throwing up. I mean, it was horrible, and I didn't even warm up on Sunday. How throws the horn out there and start, and I was literally walking down hole one, throwing up down the fairway, and I was like, I can't do it. Then I quit. I had to quit, and they took me back to the hotel room, and I just drank Gatorade for hours, and I had to beg the person at the front to allow me to stay over because I was sick. And then once it was like 3 o'clock, they came and picked me up. Felt like a champ. It was all done. Like I was never sick. I was upset.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those food poisoning's horrible.
That was my first tournament I had on the road.
Okay.
Had to quit.
So
And
as I said, it's tough to track your movements because the PDGA doesn't show the record on the database for someone who's not current. So I didn't know about that Victoria tournament. Was it from there you went to Columbia for the Mid America Open?
oh, I couldn't tell you. I mean, yeah, I couldn't tell you. We kind of like just had the disc golf world news and kind of like, where are we going next? Oh, there's a big tournament here. Let's go here, kind of thing.
So
You
you
know?
say you left right after the U.S. Open, which you win, by the way. You're the youngest player to ever win the U.S. Open, the disc golf part, not the overall.
Yeah.
Um, you actually tied for 25th in freestyle, so your chops must have gotten a little better.
I teamed up for freestyle Will West and Marcus Cisneros,
Okay.
and I was horrible at it. Marcus and Will, they were a little bit better than I, and I had a little teacher. His name was Ron Vingerelli. He taught me on how to do some stuff. He kind of laid out like our routine, and when he was giving me, when you get the spin, it's called Z's.
Yeah.
And when he would give it, it was a whole different feeling on your finger. I mean, I was like, whoa, this feels weird. It was just spinning so fast.
Right.
Yeah, it was. I was like, whoa. Yeah, I didn't know it would do that. But he gave us our little thing, our little thing that we needed to do as a three-way, for freestyle.
Your
You gotta do
routine.
this, do that. Yeah, you gotta do this, you gotta do that.
So
But yeah, it was a good time.
leading into that tour, then you hit one of disc golf's at the time Fantasyland, and I'm just going to show some pictures here because you kind of have to get the vision of it. Oh, that's the U.S. Open that you just won in 1990, the one-time photo shot. But this is the Christmas tree farm.
Yeah,
Your
Laurel Springs with Bill Boylan.
yeah, your first time. There's the cover of the Disc Golf World News.
Yeah, it looks like Harold Duvall possibly.
This is fall of '88, so it could be Carlton Howard too, but it might
Oh
be.
yeah, yeah.
But your impressions, because getting to the Boylan family farms, you had to drive down this. You have to get off the Blue Ridge Parkway and then drive down this kind of dirt road, dusty track down in this deep valley.
Yeah.
What was your like? Had you heard about the hype about Boylan
I
farms?
I did, and it was one of those things where you have to play this, you have to play this, and then like you said, driving in, you would never think that there was a frisbee course back there.
Okay.
And when you made the turn, you would see some baskets, and then you made the turn by hole two. Driving under hole two, it was just wide open, it was just like in awe and how that course was. And I even asked a question, I think on Facebook a couple years ago, with the disc nowadays, what would the scores be on that course?
Mm.
At one time I held for that course, I held the record, I think at 6 under in the rain.
48. Yep.
Yeah, in the rain. And then Stokely the next day shot 7 under. He beat me. He broke the record the next day.
Oh, man.
With no
Yeah.
rain. It was no rain. I had to pinch out. I was like, hey, mine was in the rain. Yours wasn't.
Yeah, right. For sure.
That's another
Yeah.
thing you guys can talk about during your round when you get together.
Yeah. But I think one of the best 2-minute warnings or start calls was the shotgun start. That thing would just, Bill would just start it with a shotgun, and that thing would just echo through the whole course.
Nobody wondered if it was time.
Yeah, exactly. You heard it throughout the whole course for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
think that course was probably one of the best courses that I've ever played. Other than La Mirada, obviously La Mirada is my bread and butter, but I just liked Laurel Springs. I mean, you had to throw it far there.
and I mean, with the elevation is sometimes fairly extreme. That one first shot that we saw, it's at the top of a hill, throwing across a valley of Christmas trees, and
Yeah,
so wind is going to be a huge impact. But wind was something you developed a specialty for at La Mirada because that was one of the things that Lissaman talks about. La Mirada is famous for its huge winds and contradictory winds too. You could be
yeah,
facing a headwind going down the front nine, and it's a tailwind going the other way.
yeah,
So
yeah.
1990. This is the disc golf world news, and I don't know if you were paying attention back then, but they would in two issues, the summer and then the fall. They had a list of odds on who was going to win the Worlds leading up to Scottsdale, Arizona Worlds in 1990.
Mm.
And in the summer edition, they gave Steve Weiskopf, who was at that time the defending champ, they gave him the best odds to win at 5-2. Ahart came second with a 3-1 chance. Ferens was third with 4-1, and Kenny also was third with a 4-1 chance. They listed you at 10-1 with this note: talent there may be mentally ready to win. As we updated to the fall, going into the last couple weeks before the Worlds, Climo has exerted his dominance on the tour at that point, and now he's tied with Ahart and Weiskopf for 3-1. Ginley
Mhm.
also, having played a strong tour, made it up to 4-1 to win the Worlds. You remained at 10-1 to win the Worlds. With this note, has talent, power, and a sponsor. Must maintain concentration. Were those fair comments?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that. I didn't know that they had that the odds thing.
Okay.
But I mean, in '90, I felt like top of my game. I just I just wanted to play, 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 play. That was all I did: eat, breathe, and sleep frisbee golf.
Now you're done with school. You got no other commitments. You're making
Yeah,
money on the
exactly.
road.
I mean, there was a time where in high school I had a girlfriend, and I gave her my watch. Kind of like she wanted to have my watch, and I just couldn't do it. It wasn't my thing. I like frisbee golf better. I like frisbee golf better, and then I was like, "Hey, I need my watch back." Like, I need my watch back. She's like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "I can't do it. I just, I want to play frisbee. Get done with school, be out, and go straight to the park and just play." That was it.
Beautiful
But
summer
yeah,
halcyon days.
yeah, 90, I felt that, my game was good. Like I said, I didn't know that they had an odds thing on there, you know. Um, that's probably a good assumption, 10-1. I'll take
Okay.
it, I'll take it being, mentioned in that list with those guys.
Well, for the record, Kenny, that's obviously his first win. You
Yeah.
take a top 10 finish with the ninth, good for
Yeah.
$338. Now, I know at the Iowa Worlds in Waterloo and Cedar Rapids, there was kind of almost a festive celebrity kind of spotting, a festive feel to the town. The town really got behind the Worlds. There were marquees that, signs everywhere in the town welcoming you. Was the Scottsdale Worlds a little bit different? Because we talked to Honegger last week, and Honegger says most people agree that the 90 Worlds were the best Worlds that had happened up to that point for a long time after. Did you notice a
And
difference between the two Worlds?
my first World's Iowa, I think I was just more excited, and not really paying attention to that. But being Arizona and summertime, right, is when the Worlds was, and just
That
everybody came in, and it was packed. You know, to get a room across the street was like lucky, you know, back then, because there was so many people. But yeah, it was fun. Definitely fun, and definitely a big difference from the Iowa to Arizona Worlds for sure.
So 1990 comes to a close, and you are officially sixth on the money-winning list with just under $5,000, just over 4,000. Ginley is third with that strong tour that he made, and of course, Klein was first with winning the Worlds. And that's how 1990 closes. This is right before now we're going to start one of the biggest, most epic road trip touring years that's going to happen in 1991. Whose idea was it? Was it Ginley's idea, or did you say, "Hey, can I jump in with you"?
I think I asked him, "Is he going on tour?" And he said, "Yeah." And then I said, "Can I go with you?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then in that year, like January, February, it was kind of like a tournament in California, a tournament in Arizona 1 week, tournament in Vegas 1 week, a tournament back in California, another tournament in Arizona. It was just back and forth, and then hit the road hard. I think the first tournament, God, what was it? I think
Was
the
it
first one I went to was Crosswoods.
Was it?
Uh,
I have you at the Bartholomew Open in Austin.
oh
That,
yeah, yeah, that was it.
And
Yeah, I
then
got a story.
national doubles right after that.
Yeah, I got a story on that tournament. It was
yeah.
raining hard during practice, and I was playing with Sam Grzoffi. Hole one, it's downhill,
Yeah.
and there was a creek. You remember the creek that?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, we were playing. Weather was fine, and then the rain just came in, and it filled the water up, or the creek up, all the way to the top. And we threw hole one, so we couldn't figure out. So I jumped across the creek and barely made it. Grzoffi tries to jump across the creek, hits the corner of the lip, and then just dumps right in the water. He's just buried in the water, head to toe, and just laughing. Just laughing. He wasn't happy, but it was so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do remember that. I don't even know what I took on that one. I was just more excited being on the road, just a full-time, tour with that. It was fun.
According to Paul's research, you took seventh there, and then the next weekend you played national doubles for the first time, and you tied for fifth. Did you play with Ginley on that one?
I think we did, yeah. I think we did play that year
You
together.
played part.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I know I did play with Ginley one year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did play with Ginley, but I think I know I played with Ahart. I just didn't know. What year.
That was really that was such a big event back in the day. Like everybody, coming to the end of the year and looking forward to next year. They're like, who are you going to Round Rock with next year? And like at the VPO, they would talk about that. And that was one of the first places I met anybody that was a real big name player, was at national doubles down there in Round Rock.
Yeah, that course was definitely brutal, especially with the wind coming through that place.
Yeah.
It was no fun.
The wind never stopped blowing there, and it seemed like it was in your
No.
face everywhere you looked.
Yeah, and I always had God, what hole was it? 16 across the corner of the water right there?
Yep. Yeah.
Was it
Off
16?
the dam. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the wind would always go right to left. I dumped so many discs in that corner lake right there.
Yeah.
The wind would just drop it. I mean, it was horrible.
And
It was
you wouldn't throw righty on that one.
No, for some reason I never did. I don't know why. Maybe I practiced throwing righty, but I never did. But I practiced righty a lot, especially growing up. La Mirada, I probably have like 20 aces right-handed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty wild. I can make a complete fool out of myself left-handed for sure, but then I can do that right-handed too. So
There you go.
I do it now left-handed. I just, getting back in the game, just with the new disc, it wasn't any fun.
Right.
It was just because everything would be throw hyzer and then flip up and then go. And now it's like you got to turn them over to start.
Yeah.
It's not
yeah,
fun.
without a doubt.
Yeah, actually, Chicken Hawk made me play a tournament up in Wrightwood, and he gave me all these new discs, and I'm throwing hyzer and being up in the higher elevation, you can't do that.
Mm.
And then
Right.
I found, like I said, I found some old disc when I was touring, and I found a Cyclone 2, and that thing was so beat up and warped. And I mean, I was like hit so many trees with it. I'm like, I was throwing this thing. I was like,
Pretty.
man, how could I throw it? I mean, it was so beat up, and it was like that was my go-to disc for distance, the Cyclone 2.
Back in the day.
It's pretty amazing
Yeah.
how what an impact that the Cyclone and the Cyclone 2 had at the time. And then all of a sudden was just kind of like it was absolutely one of the best discs at the time. And then all of a sudden it was obsolete. And I mean, it
Yeah.
was almost both of those paths were incredibly quick. Like it was on the scene and it was in everybody's bag. And then all of a sudden nobody was throwing it again. You know, I mean,
I was throwing I think the Shadow came out before Cyclones.
yeah,
Yeah, I was throwing the Shadows um for my distance disc. I would throw a domey Shadow because it was, for me, it was more stable. And then for flat shots, I would throw a flat Shadow. Two different types of disc.
Wow.
Yeah, that was just lucky enough to be able to go to Discraft and be able to choose.
pick what you wanted.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is the one. This is the one. I'm gonna stack of these, stack of those, and Cyclones, too. I was lucky to be able to do that.
Well, and it was kind of strange too at the time too, with the difference. There was like a huge difference between Discraft and Innova, where if you got super flat Innova discs, they were way overstable. But if you got super flat Discraft discs, that wasn't the case. They were more flippy. And like it was
Yeah,
just the opposite. The more domey the Discraft disc was, the more stable it was. And the
yeah,
flatter it was, the more prone it was to flip over. And it was exactly the opposite with Innova discs.
yeah. That is true, and I don't know why that was, but you would be like, oh, this is flat. It's gonna fly great, and then just total opposite from the
Right.
two from the two makers.
Each Mad Wizard has their own recipe.
Exactly, exactly.
So that 1991 year, from what I was able to piece together, you have 34 events. You go on a huge tour from Austin, Texas. You're bouncing around, like literally driving halfway across the continent for a tournament the next weekend. You go from Delaware to Huntsville, Alabama, to Lewiston, New York, to Minnesota, back to Detroit, Michigan, bouncing all over. A lot of miles put on the road. In fact, probably more miles than cash, but you earned a lot of cash that year. You were cashing at every event but the Dogwood Classic. Um,
I hated that course. Oh, I just wasn't a woodsy person, and then to see Carlton Howard and Larry Leonard throw just beat up discs, just perfect down the fairway, and I'm like, how do you guys do that? I'm used to throwing big old hyzers and stuff like that. I couldn't throw it straight, and I had to say after the tournament was over, I had an uptime rock, and I would just throw it as hard as I can at this pine tree about 100 times, and it was like just leaving gashes in there. I'm like, I'll never want to play this course again. I'm done. It was horrible. It was horrible. I hated it.
I
that
had a similar experience the first time I went to Michigan because the Veterans is very similar in this, and not overall similar to La Mirada, but the style of golf, where you really weren't forced to throw between the trees. You could throw around them, you could throw over them. Every once in a while you had to throw through them, but it wasn't like every hole. And when I went to Michigan the first time, I was like, how am I supposed to learn this where I live? There's nothing, and at the time we had no wooded courses. It was all, it was all like Round Rock, that's
Yeah.
Texas style golf, scattered trees, lots of open space, lots of distance, not a big demand for accuracy. And so it's interesting to hear that you had that similar struggle, but it makes sense because you came from an open style of golf.
It always seemed like you had a helicopter and full of baskets, and then they just dropped the baskets, and then there's the course.
I agree with you. On my first time at Dogwood Crosstown, I was like, how the hell do you throw straight for that long? And I'm looking at all these other locals, and they're just throwing pure butter shots right down the middle, doesn't touch a
No,
tree.
no flutter, just like you
Yeah.
said, just straight, just
So
unbelievable. Yeah,
So other than that, that one event in Raleigh, you cash it all at 33 of the 34 events. In that tour year, this is the year that you win a Player of the Year. So you get 13 wins, 6 seconds, 5 thirds for a total of 24 out of 30, 40, 34 podium finishes. Pretty damn impressive this one year, and you're winning some big money, especially because of the Can-Am. We're going to
yeah.
talk about that in a little bit. But first, I just wanted to ask you. I knew you were Uptime had taken you on as a your sponsor, and they were paying for tournament entries. Did they pay for all of the tournament entries? Do you remember? Because you, if so,
Um,
you soaked them pretty good for 34 events.
I know that they did pay for some. They paid for all my disc. I would call Tim and say I need, 2 boxes. I need 100 of this, 50 of these, and stuff like that. And I never had to pay for any of the disc.
Wow,
But I think grand total for those uptime discs, there was probably maybe 600 made.
wow.
Yeah, 600 made total.
Were you selling them as well?
I would sell them. Yeah, I mean they would help out, obviously, for gas and obviously food and places to stay and stuff like that. So and I'd pass out uptime at every tournament, leave it at the front table right there.
Now I know in at the Disc Golf Journal you had an in the bag interview with them talking about your bag, but at one point you mentioned, and this is apropos doing all the touring, you say you don't really practice that much, and that when you're on tour you prefer to meet people and see the sights. Of that first year, do you have any big memories from town to town? I know the road is going to have its own memories, but any particular towns that you like?
Yeah, those got its own memories. Just when I first started going out there, just listening, being from California, just listening to the way people talk with their accent just absolutely killed me. The Texas guys, the Oklahoma guys, and just like we would say, hey, California, hey, we're gonna go do this. They're saying is, we're fixing to do this. Like what? Soda is pop, kind of thing, and it's like,
Yeah,
and
learning slang and diction. That's
yeah, yeah. I remember staying at Mitch's house. He with his mom was making something. They asked me if I wanted goulash. I was like, I didn't know what goulash was. I was like, that's a little bit of everything from what I heard. But it was, yeah, just that and just sightseeing. Probably one of my best cities to visit was always Mississauga. For some reason, I just like Mississauga. This is the way it was so green over there, and the people were nice, and it was just awesome.
Oh, right on. This is the
Yeah,
first year also that you come to Canada. You played in St. Thomas a couple times for and in the Toronto area for the Can-Am tour.
yeah.
I have to ask this to anybody who comes to Toronto because I'm tuning in right now from Toronto. What were your impressions of the island and playing a tournament on the
Heavy coated chains. Those things were heavy. You had to hit them perfect. You had to hit them perfect. If you were just a little off, they would just bounce out. If you were left-handed, it'd just bounce out to the left, or if you're right-handed, bounce out to the right.
island? Right.
You had to be dead center.
Those were
And
still in the ground when I first started learning, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, but playing there was a treat. Being able to take the ferry over there, was for me like unheard of. You have to take a boat to go play disc golf. It was
that's a,
always it
that's
was always
definitely something that people always mention when they talk about that tournament and what there's just so many things that set it apart from other events, but that's definitely one of the things that I played. I don't know, 7 or 8 of them, something like that, events on the
yeah.
island, and it's when you talk to people, oh yeah, well finding parking, going to the kitchen table to get your lunch, and then hitting the
Yeah.
boat. I mean, like you had to be prepared.
Yeah, it was an all-day thing, that's for sure. And waiting for the ferry, if you missed it, you got to wait again. It was fun though, just to be able to take the boat. It was just different. California, you don't have anything like that.
Right.
Back then, anyways.
And I mean, from when I was growing up, there wasn't, or in my coming up in my game, they've let a lot of the island go to naturalized areas, but back then it was basically tall trees, high canopy, very little undergrowth, perfect roller opportunities. And so I know that you've had great success as a roller, but talk about Michael Sullivan as a roller.
He throws AVRs for rollers. I would see him throw AVRs. I'm throwing stingrays. It's obviously a skinnier disc, and he would just crush an AVR roller. I'm like, wow, that's unheard of. That and him just being so smooth and a great putter that he was. I was lucky enough to get him at Columbus Open, that year. I know he was heartbroken not winning the Toronto Worlds. Hosfeld got that one. I mean, his hometown. I could imagine he was just crushed, especially in the playoff. He was there.
Yeah.
It was there at the moment, and unfortunately, it didn't happen that way.
I mean, I think if I recall, that was the first Worlds that went to a playoff. So there's an
Oh, was
interesting,
it?
yeah, I think so.
Ah,
We'll have to get the official researchers on that. Hey, Mace.
The statistician.
So 1991 saw a lot of money being handed out, and it wasn't just on the Can-Am Tour. There were little mini tour bonuses. For instance, there were the two back-to-back tournaments in Delaware, the Brandywine Creek Classic, and then the Lumberjack Open, and they had a combined overall. In the Can-Am, there was the overall Can-Am points bonus, and as well the last three events they called the Triple Threat was a special mini series. Same with the Mid America Open and the Laurel Springs Open and the Edgewood Electric. They called that the Triple Challenge bonus. You won a lot of money from those bonus things, and at that time, it felt like the money was getting thrown around like this. Did it feel like, wow, disc golf has all of a sudden gotten big and profitable, and this is something I could definitely do?
yeah. And I know a lot of people thought that Dwayne Utech was sponsoring me. That's what I heard
Oh, okay.
back in the day. But no, he just promoted, the Can-Am stuff. I never got any money, from Dwayne. But it's just being able to cash in those events and lucky enough to have that extra money as a bonus was, it's always good.
Where of that tour, 27 of the tournaments you played in 1991 were part of the top 40 richest tournaments. You cashed in 26 of them. I mean, outside of the worlds, no, sorry, outside of Japan and Santa Cruz, you were at every one of the top 10 and cashed every one of the top 10 of those events. You were smoking that year. It was on fire for you and it was working.
Yeah, there was a time when I would just look and see how much was first. I mean, it was just I just go to a tournament and play, and I'm like, all right, this is what I'm gonna get. Now you can't do it. There's so many good players out there. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And I was just, like I said, lucky enough to win, so many tournaments that year. And then when we went on again in 92, I don't remember. I think I won like in 91. I want to say it was like 16 or something like that, tournaments, 17. In 92, I didn't think I was going to win that many tournaments
Hmm.
in 92 because it was just hard to win, And so Ginley said, let's do this. If you win a tournament, you get $500 from the first place, and then we throw the money in together, and then we do 50-50. And I was like, all right, that's good, because I was like, I'm not going to win that many tournaments, and I think I won just as many in 92. I was like, darn it.
Okay, so Mace, why don't you just jump down to tour life in Ginley? I know it's got me on there, but
Yeah, yeah.
let's just get into some Ginley Road stories from 1991.
Oh,
Okay, so when and where did you all first meet? You and Dan.
La Mirada, I believe it was La Mirada Open. He always called me this little skinny, scrawny kid, and I just liked the way he was, and he was a great player coming from Arizona, and we just became friends and right away, and then we'd agreed to travel together in 91, and obviously 90 and 89 saw him at a lot of the tournaments and stuff. So I felt Dano and him being on tour years prior, it was a good choice for me.
Yeah.
It
Guys,
was a smart choice. He was like the older brother that I've never had, you know.
So
So
you're the
he's the one.
oldest in your family?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dano's the one, like I said earlier, Dano was the one who made the schedule. Okay, Dad, this is where we're going.
Nice.
Stories about Dano. God.
well,
Um,
I asked him specifically about your nickname.
that nickname Suave came from Johnny and Jeff Lissaman. Um, we were at the Kansas City Wide Open in the finals, and that song came on, Rico Suave. And we were walking through this birthday party or something. There was a party going on, and I threw a shot, and the twins would be like Suave, and it just stuck ever since. Came from the Kansas City Wide Open.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it was. That's funny that they did that, and it stuck for. I mean, it's actually still to this day.
Yeah.
Would when I go out, they'll every now and then I'll hear it. I just laugh.
But that wasn't your type of music, was it?
No,
Yeah.
no. My favorite band of all time is Oingo Boingo.
Nice.
80s, and that was it. And when the U.S. Open came around, they actually gave out Oingo Boingo tickets.
Nice.
Uh,
What?
yeah, through
Nice.
through K Rock was one of the radio stations. One of the DJs was passing out Oingo Boingo tickets.
Wow.
I don't remember who it was. Yeah, but Mike Brignoni, he's the one who got me into, obviously the game, and he got me in the Oingo Boingo. And if we weren't playing frisbee golf, it was at his house playing basketball 2-on-2 or 1-on-1 with his room was like right there, and he put a speaker on the windowsill right there, and we'd play basketball, listening to Oingo Boingo and stuff like that.
How about the Cure?
I wasn't a Cure person or Depeche Mode.
Okay.
Now I like Depeche Mode, but still I'm not a Cure fan.
But
I don't know why.
you and
Just wasn't.
Dano didn't quite share the same musical tastes, did you?
That's for sure. That is for sure. I remember he was a Grateful Dead fan, and he had so many CDs, Grateful Dead, and he would listen to them. And then, oh God, I remember driving, and it was a tape, and he ejected it and threw it out the window.
That's one of the stories.
I'm done listening to this, but his car, I couldn't throw his case of CDs out the window.
And this is the thing about the Grateful Dead, especially Deadheads, is they say, "Oh no, the Boston '76 version of this song is you got to hear this, and then we'll listen to Monterey '78 or things like they get very into the specific live show thing. It's tough to amuse a Grateful Dead.
That's
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, he was a big time Grateful Dead, and he's the one who controlled the radio while we were driving. That's for sure.
So
And
here's what he says on one drive. I kept telling him not to play the tape, and he said it was The Cure, but it could have been something else.
oh,
And he put it in anyway. I popped it out, threw it out the window. His jaw dropped. I can still kind of vision that face of like, what?
yeah, I don't remember what seat or tape it was, but he crushed it out the window. That's for sure. I do remember that. Yeah,
That's funny.
that was good. Another one story with him was he'd always sleep with the TV on. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, he'd always sleep with the TV on, and I'd be like, "Hey, when you're going to sleep, turn the TV off. You know when you're going to sleep, just shut it off." And I said, and I told him, I go, if I wake up, turn over, and the TV's off, and you're passed out, I'm gonna get this pillow and just smack it right across your face. And I turned over, TV's on, his mouth is wide open, and I got the pillow and just smacked him right across the face with it. And I go, I told you, you left TV on.
This was a warm up for raising Alex.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the younger brother got him, you know. That one, and then when I know that when he won the final tournament of the Can-Am, that last one in Michigan, um, I think he won like $2,000 for that one. I'm not sure how much he won, and then his overall money. And I had won the like I said, I won the overall. I don't remember what it was, and then I placed in the tournament. And we probably had like $7,000 in cash on us at that time. And he was like, "Hey, let's go to a nice hotel room." We were thinking like New Jersey or something like that. And I was like, "All right." So he picks this spot. It looked like a cottage. It was a nice hotel. It was like $250 a night. And he's like, "We're gonna do it." And I go, "No, that's $250 a night." And he's like, "No, we're gonna do it. Let's just enjoy it." We had the little open bar, right there. Whatever you take, you have to pay and stuff like that. But we were driving down, and I saw these two girls in the road, and I said, "Slow down." And I go parallel with these girls. And I grabbed all of our cash, and then I threw it up in the air in the car, and the cash just went all over the car. And I gave them a thumbs up, and I said, "All right, go." Yeah, I was like, then he's like, "Why'd you do that?" And I was like, "Why not? We can."
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. So
That and every now and then Frank Allen would jump in the car with us. He was a guy from Arizona. Yeah, I think he did the 90 Worlds hot stamp, that logo. He did that logo. So he would drive with us, and Danny's car was in the front, was only a 2-seater. So if there was three, you'd have to be in the back on the bed. And I was sleeping on top of the sleeping bag, and Danny was driving, and he had to slam on the brakes. Well, he had the little windowsill. That's how we would go back and forth. And when he slammed on the brakes, I was on top of the sleeping bag, and I slipped right through the window like that. And I looked at him, I was like, "Hey guys." Yeah.
well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's a pretty good rig there, driving that way. That way, people you can keep the vehicle going at max
Yeah.
speeds for long distance. Lord knows you put enough miles on the road. But in that Can-Am circuit, you say you would stay with Wise Cup in Dayton or Fankhauser when you were in
Uh-huh.
Ontario. One of the anomalies in the research I was looking at was also an in the bag with Jeff Lissaman, and he was saying at that time they were living in St. Thomas. Do you recall were the Lissamans living in St. Thomas
They were
before they?
probably staying at Pinniger's house, Greg Pinniger. Pinniger's there, Jeff Malton.
Yeah, Stocky Bob.
I'm not sure, but maybe Paul Burak. I'm
Yeah,
not sure if he lived in St. Thomas,
yeah,
but I know that they stayed there for a while. And Pinniger would always invite us, to go to his cottage. And there was another with Gano story. Pinniger invites us to the cottage, and there's a lake there, and we like to go fishing. So me and Dano got in this little canoe at Pinniger's house, and we were in the little creek behind his cottage. And I stood up, and Pinniger's like, "Don't stand up on that," and it was wobbling, almost went overboard in the canoe, and Pinniger was just busting up. I was like, "I ain't doing that again." And I told Pinniger, we're friends on Facebook. I said, "Hey, if I come in town, make sure you got the canoe." He started busting up.
So back
uh,
in those days, you guys were just doing it was just the early version of the couch surf, I assume, staying with folks everywhere you went,
Yeah,
not really getting hotels very often from the sound of things.
it was just nice enough to be able to get into a town and, with Dano traveling years before, he knew a lot of people and what tournaments to go to. And, oh, we're going to stay at this person's house. Like I said, he was the one who did the tour list and where we were staying at and stuff like that. Like I said, I was the
money maker.
I was the person, I was the person that, sat on the passenger side and just whatever he did, that's what we did.
Well, you guys carved out a good circuit for yourselves there in '91. A lot of great success all over the Can-Am finals in river bends, and some of those courses, especially as a warm up for the Worlds the next year, they were really high praise. Do you remember your impression of the Michigan area courses for the Can-Am?
I remember, God, was there a course, Addison Oaks or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Added some strokes.
was there two courses at that one park? Because you had to pay to get in, right?
You had to pay to get it, but I think it was just the one. But it was
Was
like
it
one of those
one?
world
I know
class courses.
that course was always tough, for me.
River Bends was another one too.
Mhm.
Yeah, River
In that
Bends
same rules.
and then the course in Troy, firefighters, I believe.
Firefighters.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the course where I threw that Marauder across the river
Yeah.
or the lake or something like that. But I missed a putt, so it didn't even matter. I could have laid up. I threw it that far and I didn't even make it. But
So,
yeah. I remember those three courses,
okay.
and then I remember playing in which I never saw. I want to say Iowa or something like that, where they had the cone basket or not.
Right, right.
Yeah, I was tripping out on that. And they actually used, we played a tournament out there. I think we stayed with Bob Kramer.
Okay.
And I was never even seen that before. And they used those baskets. I think there was like 4 holes with those things. And I was like, man, this is weird. You had to obviously putt soft with those.
Yeah.
They
I
would
think
just bounce right off.
would that have been that tournament in Madrid, Iowa, the Edgewood Labor Day Classic?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably.
Right after the Worlds, where you tied for third, you're feeling pretty good at that with that tie for third.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Kenny was just tough to beat so many times, Worlds was his thing, and then during all the other tournaments, we were always just battling it back and forth. We got in a few heated arguments, whether if it was bouncing off a tree, it was like you're so lucky kind of thing, going through trees, just we're just back and forth, just at the end of the day though, high five and stuff like that.
Well, looking at the two of you, it's kind of a study in contrast. I mean, Kenny was tall, huge wingspan, just a muscle rippled, massive beast of a guy throwing the disc, and beside him, you're a smaller guy, but yet you can throw as far, you can putt as well, you can throw all the shots pretty well. And you got the consistency. It's just when it came to the Worlds, Kenny just had a different gear.
I couldn't do it. I know I'd always do good the first 2 days, and then 4 flat tires the next 2 days. I couldn't put it together, unfortunately. Kenny, the Worlds was his thing,
Yeah.
He
So-
really excelled at that endurance contest aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
Now, 1991, even though he wins the Worlds, you win the Player of the Year, the Tour Player of the Year for the PDGA. Where you were now obviously aware of Ken. Were you aware of the comparisons? Were you? I made that in your boast that when the two of you would show up, the whole field would be playing for third. Did you get that feel? Was that actually a real feel?
Yeah, back then it was tenure, for the Kenny and I, Wise Cup was there, always, Danny was, Dano was always up there as well. Just majority of all the touring pros, it was close, and Kenny and I we were just, I'm saying we were just lucky always to be up there
Right.
on a consistent basis.
Skilled.
Skilled, exactly, Roy. Definitely.
That was my brother. He's over there chiming in.
I hear him in the background every once in a while.
Yeah, he's chiming in.
There's actually in one of the world newses, there's a picture of Frankie Arroyo and your brother, just showing
Oh,
the
yeah.
next young people coming up out of La Mirada. I
Yeah,
couldn't find it in time for this.
Yeah, I remember the summertime open. He was playing, and he was playing amateur, and he won that tournament. It was like the best feeling.
Nice. That's awesome. Another
Yeah,
Valencia coming up. The whole
Yeah, it was
field
good.
groans. Oh my God, we got another one to deal with.
I was like a little kid crying in the candy store. I couldn't get the candy. I was so happy for him. It's
So
like I got done with my round, and I was going into the direction where he was finishing up at, and I didn't see his last putt, but he was walking back, and then he just smiled, and I knew it.
Another
Some
champion
of those
born
big
at
brother
La
ass
Mirada.
whoopings paying off.
And not just in disc golf either.
So, Mace, shall we skip ahead to 1992?
Sure. So this is one of the things that's really been fun for me personally, is especially interviewing some of you SoCal players that have been around a long time, and then names that pop up that I remember from when I first started touring that I didn't hear for a long time. And one of the first ones on this 92 list was Greg Barnicoat. Was Barnicoat on that tour with you and Ginley in
He
92?
traveled on his own. He was on his own ride, but he kind of like followed around. We were always in the same tournaments, and played I played a Round Rock tournament with Barnicoat. We ended up losing to Wise Cup and Mitch in a playoff.
That's right.
That kind of seems like I remember him doing that when I was touring too. Like he was hanging out with certain people, but he'd always driving his own car.
Yeah, yeah. He was on his own and just show up and kind of be just following everybody, Yeah, but we teamed up for that, and we ended up losing to Steve and Mitch on that one. And he could throw a mile too for a big guy.
Yeah, he did have a large frame for sure.
Yeah, he came out out of San Diego actually, Morley Field.
Right on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where he started playing at.
Did you play as many events in 92 as you did in 91, or were there just a bit fewer?
Oh,
Still the big ones.
I don't know.
Do you remember being as busy as like each weekend?
I know that in 92, I know we made a thing, like an agreement, that after the tournament on Sunday, we would drive to our next wherever we were going, and we wouldn't even pick up a disc Monday or Tuesday. Wednesday we would, obviously be there, walk the course, play golf or whatever, and go to a movies, just like relax. And then Thursdays, start going to town and preparing, and then usually Fridays was doubles, and then Saturday and Sunday play, and just start over again.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was touring, we started a deal called Monday Fun Day, and we would always do something. We would try to do it as a big group, as many as possible, but we'd always do something that wasn't golf that day. And a lot of times it was amusement parks. But if you look at the schedule now and look at the way, it's kind of interesting how the tour's crafted itself now, and the players only want to play 3 days or 4 days. And I think they mostly lean towards 3 days, and it's because of 3 rounds, 3 days because of travel. I mean, like if you're playing 4 days, then when's your practice time and when's your travel time? I mean, there's things about the schedule now that I look at, and it's not near as attractive to me as it was, from, I started in 98, 99. And that was one of the things that I always loved the most about it all was, what are we doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and and it's from what I hear them. And at first, I was like, "Well, man, you guys are living the life. You're living a dream." And then I started looking at that, and I go, "Wow, there's some things about this dream that are definitely a nightmare, but it's still a dream." You know?
Yeah, that was tough, because we, leave January/February and then go all the way to like October. Different city, different week, and then 3 months off and every play a little, and then January, February come around and start back over.
So on the Friday doubles, because obviously that's not part of the official tournament paperwork, none of that enters the official record books. But uh, were you a pretty good Friday casual pickup doubles player?
Yeah, I like to play, and especially if some of the locals and stuff showing the routes and stuff like that. And I remember one time Kenny and I teamed up in uh, New York, Rochester,
Okay.
and both of us teamed up, and we were horrible.
Really?
We were horrible. Yeah, it was almost to the point. It's like, all right, I just shanked one. Okay, he's got it. Okay, we're in the woods now, kind of thing. It was, yeah, it was bad.
Somebody should have been filming that because that never happens.
Yeah, it was funny. Just like, oh, well, they got it, and we didn't do good. And I think that was the only time Kenny and I ever teamed up for doubles.
Wow,
The whole time we were traveling. Yeah.
that's because it's usually just random draw, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Random draw. Exactly.
Wow.
And then I remember playing a course in Atlanta somewhere. What was the big tournament in Atlanta
A tournament
with
of champions.
yeah.
Hotlanta. Hotlanta
Yeah.
Open.
Yeah, well, I was tournament champions back then.
Yeah.
What was it John and Patty would run that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember they did a new course. I don't remember the name of it, but they had a nickname on a hole was Nightmare on Elm Street. And I found this AVR, beat up AVR. I mean, you literally had to put some serious hyzer on it. But the hole went to the right, kind of like one of them holes over at Crosswoods in Raleigh. Went to the right and then just hooked all the way back left. And I threw this AVR that I just found and hyzered and it just big time left and it went in. It went in the hole, and I was like, funny. I didn't end up keeping it. I just whatever. I don't remember what I did with it, but it was funny to ace it over a disc I just found literally like 5 minutes prior.
That seemed
Yeah,
par for your course for sure.
yeah, that was pretty funny. Kenny and I just looked at each other, and I was like, that hit pretty solid, and it was sitting in the basket.
You and Ken, you had I think we have a breakdown of what your head-to-head record was for 92. But
Wow.
before we get there, just want to talk. We've already had Crazy on, and we talked to him about Columbus Open 92 and the shot, the damn shot. That was one of the great filmed events of disc golf history. Um,
Unbelievable.
but up to this point, you're fairly comfortable playing in front of galleries. But at the Columbus Open, Brent Hambrick went above and beyond in terms of kind of almost LA, Lamorado, US Open style of promotion to get spectators out. Do you
He
recall
run,
being,
he won. Yeah, he wanted to run the best tournament, and I know that he definitely went out of his way to try to get there. That's for sure. And the award ceremony, he had this big old stage, if I remember correctly, in 91 and 92. And it was he did great. Unfortunately he's not with us anymore. It's
yeah.
it's a bummer.
Do
You
you,
know, he's
did you
definitely
ever,
missed, that's for sure, in the disc golf community.
absolutely. I mean, people who've made an impression, anyone with a strong connection with this game is making an impression, but he was one of those larger than life souls who made
Yeah.
a huge impression everywhere he went.
Yeah. And then now the guys running it, stepped up and in his footsteps and doing the same stuff, and it's props
Yeah,
to
it's
those
a,
guys.
I went to probably the first 7 or 8 of those. Well, let me rephrase it. I went to the second through like the eighth or the ninth of those Brent Hamrick memorials, and that was definitely always a highlight of the summertime. There was always something good that was going on there, and
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I got lucky enough to meet Brent in Norman. Randolph introduced me, and it was probably the first pro-am that I ever went to, Norman Pro-Am, and Mitch Mack, home course, and just being the animated, crazy, just unbelievably entertaining golfer that he is. Like, he made the final nine, and he hit basket on like 6 holes in a row, and then finally aced the ninth hole. And
Wow.
like, he would hit the basket and then leave it. It would get a roll away, and it was still on the Mach 1 conversions with the little short trays, and he was just on fire, and he'd still hit these putts. Like, he was still in the hunt. He'd have like a 35-foot roll away, and then he'd go out there and he'd hit the putt, probably with the kitty hawk, and then he hits the ninth hole, and the ring hits the top of the basket. And it's the old, like you were talking about, there's interchange, but they didn't go to the bottom, and
Yeah.
somehow that disc stayed in, and he was running off the tee pad, throwing his hat in the air with his whole, you know what I mean? Like, the whole, and there, and that's like, that was the whole scene where I met Brent as well, and then fast forward to like 96 and 97 when he was in the midst of his cancer battle. And I played Edgewood, I think in 97. He was on my card during like the second or third round. And I was just like, holy shit, he must have really played bad. But I didn't realize, like, I'd seen him, but I didn't know the real story. And then I played that round with him. And it was all he could do to shoot 2 under on Rapid Run, which was a temporary course if you played any of the old
Nah.
Cincinnati days. But it wasn't something that was permanent, but it was an easy course. I mean, the really good players were shooting, 10, 11, 12, and just to watch him and to see, how hard he fought just for that 2 under, and he never bitched, he never complained. He didn't have any hair, he was driving the convertible Camaro, and it was just like one of those things, like, I'll never forget it, just to have met him at that one period of time and then saw him 2 years later where life was basically taking life away from him. It was really, really remarkable.
Yeah, definitely a bummer. That's for sure, man. He, like I said earlier, he was definitely missed throughout the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a memory from Crazy about the Columbus Open, not having to do with the dam shot, but he says one Saturday, Jim Kenner had unveiled the Hawk in his line of mid ranges. Steve had a stack of blanks with him fresh off the belt, and he and Sam Ferens were going at it rock versus hawk from the shelter by the check-in all the way across the street and on top of a hill where the CTP basket was located. One of the very last throws was Steve Valencia's, and although he did make the hole-in-one for a classic walk-off win, instead, he believes, it impaled itself on top of the nickel on the top of the basket. Literally a walk-off win that amazed everyone. Do you remember this memory?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. That was me and Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Walk-off.
do not remember that.
Okay. Well,
But
crazy.
I do remember getting the Hawks, and those white ones were a little bit, to me, were a little bit more chalkier. Like I said earlier, I like the chalkier ones, and that's why I had the stack. And I just, for some reason, I just like the chalking feel to them.
Nice.
You know, but I don't remember that one though.
Okay.
But that's pretty funny though. And I'm sure Sammy and I were gambling in some form.
The bench travels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we made an imaginary bench probably throughout our
So,
travel.
so you had been to this area before in 1991 with all the big Can-Am events. Now UTEC is hosting the Worlds. What were those Worlds like?
Uh, Fun, hot, humid.
Was
You
I
know,
know UTEC put a lot of money into the sport. Was his events, were they all really well organized? Were they good, fun,
yeah,
player friendly events?
yeah. He wanted to bring out the best in all the top players to his events. Putting that kind of money in and doing the 10 tournaments, and you take your best five for overall. And
Yeah.
all of the top pros were at every single event.
Oh yeah. When
You
I
know,
played, my very first event was the Island in '93, and that was the year after the big Can-Am years. And so we went from first place on the island in '92. It was, I don't know, 4, 6, $800 to $83 the next year. And
Jeez.
you could feel the vacuum, you could feel the step down. And all I heard for years was, oh, the big Can-Am years, UTEC. And so I would look at the stats and I would see the Lissamans were on the island. Valencia was on the island. Klima, all the top players came to the Can-Am events because of the
Yeah.
money and because the courses were, and you have that high of a purse, you're going to attract the best, and the best want to play against the best, right?
Yep. Yep. For sure. He, like I said, he put some serious money into all of his events, and it brought out the best of them. At the best of the players. That's for sure. If you do it nowadays, you're going to do the same thing. It's not like back nowadays is like you'll have a big tournament on the East Coast and a big tournament on the West Coast the same week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
maybe
definitely
even one in the middle.
it's definitely saturation, big time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good to see those guys go to other countries and in Europe and play for the big money.
Yeah. Well,
We never, other than going to the Japan Open, once, these guys are going all over the place.
yeah. You
Players are
never,
getting better.
you never played in Europe. Do you feel like
I
you missed
never
it?
did. No.
Yeah. Do you feel like
Yeah, I never did.
would that have been a bucket list item for you?
Yeah, I've always wanted to play in Sweden. With the U.S. Open, Paul Brunstrom.
Yep.
And Thomas Ekstrom, they would come for the overall tournament, and just seeing how those guys throw, and Thomas was throwing AVRs, a mile too. I was like, yeah, you should come out in Sweden, but I never did though. That would have been a good bucket list.
It would have been. I mean, you only
Yeah,
went to Japan once, and that was one of my questions to myself. How come you
yeah.
didn't go for years? Gidley's going, Sam's going, obviously crazy, and you.
Well, I don't know. I think I was just too young and more nervous. And the year that I actually went to Japan, I got dropped off at LAX, and I'm waiting in line, and who do I see there is Conrad Damon walking in, and I was like, "You going?" And he was like, "Yeah." And say I was seating 10-1 or whatever A, which was the window. He was 10B.
Wow.
Never even planned it. Didn't go to then just didn't go. Never planned nothing, and then just see him there, and he's sitting next to me was funny. And he played La Mirada a lot, but he had moved up to San Francisco. So he came from San Francisco to LAX and then got on the flight from there.
Wow.
And he, like I said, from La Mirada, obviously gambling. And I think it was like a 16, 17-hour flight. I think we played cribbage for like 10 hours on the on the on the flight. And then Sam, being that he would go almost every year, he gave me a piece of paper written in Japanese, and then he put it in English, like so I can understand it. I'd have to give it to somebody. But Conrad had gone already, so he knew exactly where to go and what to do. And I didn't even have a room yet, and he didn't have a room either. So when we got there, we stayed in the same room together, and that was like
Nice.
it was like a funny story. It was like
Just
not
meant
even
to be.
planned. Yeah, not even planned, and we ended up staying, the whole week there.
Wow.
Yeah, and it
And
was fun.
what did you think of Japan? You had to throw 150 class plastic, or were you throwing 150 class plastic then?
Yeah, it was 150, and it
And
was cold, and I think raining too, so it was tough.
okay.
Yeah, and 150 ain't going to stay stable in wind, obviously.
Yeah, that was I remember one of the things that Selinsky said to me, that like he drove this point home to me on several different occasions. He's like, look, all this other stuff's really cool. He goes, but if you ever get the chance, you have to go to Japan. And I've only gone once, and I wish I had been able to stay longer and experience some of the other things, but man, that golf experience was unsurpassed. I mean,
Yeah.
It was, you know, Shimbo came over a couple of years. One year he spotted on hole 9 at USDGC, but he came over 2 or 3 years for US Disc Golf Championship and brought a few of his people and really took some notes and you know, took his game to another level there as well. You know, and I'm sure those events before that were great. Don't get me wrong, but man, when I went in 13, I was just like blown away, just steadily, consistently blown away,
Yeah.
and
And
it
there's
was
some
amazing.
great players in Japan too. I mean, that you never even heard of, you know.
Mhm.
It's awesome to see that in other countries, you know. Like I said, Sweden with the guys out there and just everywhere in Europe.
Well, in terms of your trip to Japan, you take eighth in a field of 25, and you still cash $1,000. The purses there in for the Japan Open were huge. I mean, and it was always ranking on the top, maybe one or two of richest purses each
Yeah.
year. Also, got a quick quote from the Disc Golf World News. There was a gallery of nearly 500 that were in awe of the power of the shots being thrown, especially by Elaine King, Ken San, and Steve Valencia, who during the week showed great talent but wasn't able to put together consistent rounds to hold the pack. He'll be back. That was the word there in '94. But you never went back to Japan, did you? Was worn out.
No, I think that's 95. I was starting to slow down. Um, Met a girl and then ended up, you know, having a daughter. And I just slowed down from that and basically quit for 10 years. And then my first tournament back, it was Wrightwood, which is a whole different level up in the mountains. You know, I didn't have any fun because I was throwing hyzer and you couldn't do that. And my first round that I ever played with up there when I came back was with Paul Macbeth.
Huh.
No, nice.
Wow.
That was my first Paul Macbeth and John Tompkins. John Tompkins, and then
I don't
just
know who that is.
it was a good friend of Paul's. He would always caddy for him and stuff out here locally. And I've heard of Paul, but I never played with him until that day. And he was throwing a mile. It was just like, geez. I was like, you know, and just making all the putts. I mean, downhill, 50 footers. I mean, just dead center, just not giving, you know, not giving up, just hitting them. It was good to fun to see for sure.
Had he heard of you?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. And there was actually another Steve Valencia that plays too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so a lot of people when I wasn't playing thought that was me. Thought that
You,
was me, and that particular event, I actually met him that Saturday.
okay.
That's where I first met him. And I was like, I was just giving him crap, like, "Hey, you're trying to steal my name," and you know, stuff like that.
Well, it's funny. You guys have similar PDGA numbers. Yours is 4256. His is 42259. Like,
Oh wow,
yeah, that's one of those eerie footnotes of history right there.
it would have been funny if it was like 42560 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
listen,
Oh, yeah.
Steve.
I looked this up. Pete Rose career hits 4256.
Wow,
I was laughing at that.
that's awesome.
That's
That's a,
Yeah,
ironic.
it's a neat
yeah,
little symmetry in numbers.
yeah.
Um,
I
speaking
thought
of
that was cool.
numbers, we've kept you on the line now 2.5 hours. I think we've pretty well exhausted all the minutia from the early '90s, and we'd love to have you back eventually if you'd like to come back. But
Yeah,
we
that'd
don't
be
want to
great.
bend your ear too much longer. We know you've got a day to get going on, but we can't thank you enough for taking all this time to just sit and get down in the weeds with us on all this.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys for having me on the show. Yeah, and I'll do it again for sure.
Nice, right on.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for stopping by. And it's you know, that there's just so many. It really is just cool to hear these stories again and not again, but you know, just like the names that pop up and the you know, like having heard a lot of these stories from Leva and you know, just different versions of them or just a little bit different versions or a sliver from the same
Uh,
event just from his perspective and you know, it's really cool to hear more about these people that I have heard a lot about in the past.
Yeah, yeah. It's him and Stokely were like, and Frank Aguilera just throw the disc so far. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and you think that you throw far, and then you
And then you
play
see
against
that
these
guy.
guys. Yeah, exactly. It's like, whoa.
I remember going to a temporary course here in Arlington that they used for the VPO one year. It's called Kelly Park, and I went with Craig and showed him around the first time. I'd already played a lap, and it's one of those things where it was temporary, so you didn't know where anything was. And there was this one hole that lined up by this walking path, and there was 3 trees, and the biggest one was the closest one, and they kind of got a little smaller and a little smaller, and the basket was behind the third tree. And then there's this big flat field, and there's a creek that kind of came into the opening, and there was a tree over there, and there was a basket over by that creek. And I mean, it was another 250 feet further than where the basket that we were playing was. And so Craig steps up and just rips, with supersonic snap of rock, and he parks that basket that was way on the other side of the field, like 600 feet away and stuff. Like nobody's throwing anything 600 feet, and Craig throwing rocks regularly,
Yeah.
550 to 600 feet. And he parks the hole, and he goes, "Well, that was all right." And I go, "Yeah, if that was the basket we were playing to." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And finally, I march him way out, like 40, 50 feet to the right. And I go, "You see that one down there? That's the one I was pointing out, not that one over there. That one, and there were so many stories like that where you're just like, yeah, he's on the verge of getting a black ace on a hole that you're going to play in 3 holes or something like that. Nobody can reach it, but he can.
Yeah. Yeah, he threw a mile. So does Scott. It's just like I was listening to Kenny's cast one time, and he was talking about Stokely and how far he can throw, and Kenny doesn't. We don't necessarily throw as far as Scott, but yet we're beating him.
Yeah.
It's like, just don't get it. He can out throw us, but we're just the putting.
Well, it's all that same. I mean, you see this in ball golf. You drive for show, you putt for dough. That's what it comes down to.
Exactly.
If you can't
Exactly.
put the biscuit in the basket, doesn't matter how close you get it, right?
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Well, you got that biscuit into many baskets, and you've left your mark on the sport. I hope that the young people in the game will appreciate the history of where this all comes from, because we can't really look at these guys now and say they're giants without acknowledging all the efforts from the early tours, early top pros, and not just
Yeah.
the pros, but the people, the promoters, the TDs, and all that. So you rightfully take your place among the stars in the history of this game. So thank you for taking the time to sit down with
Appreciate
us.
it, guys. Thank you so much.
Nice.
All right,
So
thanks, guys. Have a good day.
good
Hey,
luck
right
and
on.
go
Thanks, Steve.
Chargers.
Good
You're
talking to you.
welcome. Yeah, nice talking to you guys.
All right, later,
bye.
bro.
All right, bye.
Did you ever get did you ever go through one?
Yeah, I'm like this. That's a lot of information that we skipped.
Yeah, sorry, Mace. I do. Again, I'm sorry for
No, no,
burying you under a mountain of info.
no. There's no reason to apologize.
We're still we're still recording and we're still live.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll talk to you more here shortly when we're not live. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Really feel like that was a great show, and glad. Hopefully, all y'all enjoyed it.
Next show is Saturday, December 30th, the PB&J reunion tour.
Yeah. What time? Do we have a time on that?
I don't think we have a time yet, but probably 7 or 8, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds good to me.
We'll get the info out about that specifically. But in the meantime, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas, Mace. Sorry you couldn't wear your Santa Claus hat. It was messing too much with the
Yeah.
the
See,
big man.
it likes to grab that black background behind me. There you go.
There you go. But all right, in the meantime, everybody, take care. Thanks for tuning in for those who did. And hopefully you learned as much as we did about disc golf in the late 80s and early 90s.
All right. Have a good one, everybody.